Okay, start now. So if we do roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Here.
Mrs. Keller?
Here.
Mr. Browning?
Here.
Mr. Rohr?
Here.
Mr. Hellinger?
Here.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Thanks. Here.
Mayor Riggle?
Yeah. Me too. I like the beat. We need it. We don't.
So, I guess, Tom, you're first up, it looks like.
Yeah, I'm just going to make a couple of comments, and then we can roll right into the, the presentations, which are really intended, as has been the practice in the past, to be somewhat informal in terms of directors providing city council kind of an overview of their budgets, and giving council an opportunity to ask questions and make comments. One of the things I'd be interested in learning this year, this is the third year that we've used the programmatic budget, and it is I think it was intended to provide council with information less about line item detail and more about outcomes and how we measure outcomes. And it is a Herculean task putting that together. Essentially, it's been aided in the last couple of years by Rob Elder, who's worked with Dean and the directors on getting it all set up. But there is the back end of that operation is involved and requires a lot of time. So one of the things we want to learn through this process is how has there been any value added from a city council member's perspective to have that programmatic information. And if the consensus is to continue to do it, we're going to be looking at tools that will help us do it better on the back end. And so that's just one thing to keep in mind. And that's about it. I think really we've got a number of presentations today, and there's policy issues that I've outlined which we can take up at a certain point, either later today or Monday. Policies with regards to the parking implementation study. There's some other issues that we'll want to talk about, but I think the real thrust of where we are right now in terms of this morning's work session is just hearing from directors, giving them a chance to provide counsel with what they're doing and what they want to see done. And I think John is our first guy because
he has to go to Cincinnati.
But we will set aside some time to talk about these policies.
Absolutely, yeah. I think that's what, yeah.
And Ken, I guess you're going to be rooting for Xavier too. I know you have your blue on.
For who?
Xavier.
I'm not even aware. I won't see what I'm looking for later today.
Good morning. Yes, I am headed to Cincinnati. Today's the what they call the crosstown shootout between UC and Xavier, and I'm a UC graduate.
Oh, my daughter's UC. I'm a UC fan.
But I am a Xavier basketball fan, so it's one of those bittersweet. But good morning. And as I was reflecting on this year's budget, it's hard to believe, but this is my 12th budget that I've done here for the city. Time flies, and has gone very quickly. But I've really reflected over the past 10 years of what we've accomplished. And in 2007, we created our first strategic plan, and that laid the foundation for our fire department. It was a customer-driven strategic plan where we got input from our public, from city council, as well as our fire department. And from that, we identified 4 items that we need to work on for the fire department. And that was stations and facilities and equipment, personnel, communication, and also policies. And I look back, we've secured the funding back in 2010 that laid the foundation for the replacement of much of our equipment. We've added Station 303. As part of 2018, we'll be adding Station 304. Replace the equipment. Worked on our communication internally and also externally, and certainly updated our policies. But along with that, in 2018, we're going to make additional strides. And as I mentioned, it's been 10 years since we developed our strategic plan. We're currently working on an update of our strategic plan. You may recall in October, we did our external stakeholders input. On our first one, we received 33 people that provided input. We tripled that number through social media and meeting with the public and getting great feedback. And it's night and day difference, the feedback that we've got. Strategic plan and feedback was really an eye-waking impact on our fire department, some of the services and how we were doing things. This one, we received very positive feedback on our operations, and I thank you, and I think that's because we together worked on a vision of where our fire department was going and is going, and I think it's having a great impact on our community.
And you don't think you had anything to do with that?
I
do.
think, well, thank you, but I think it's, again, it's a teamwork on all of us with that. But this year, as I mentioned, we'll be adding Station 304, which is going to be a huge accomplishment for our department, which will provide improved coverage quadrant. And I think if we look at that and we look at even this upcoming planning commission, another set of homes, additional development in that area is occurring, and we need to get down to that area, and we are getting down to that area. But the budget will include not only the station, but also personnel, and also the promotion of 3 of our firefighters to the position of lieutenants to have an officer there. As I mentioned, we'll be wrapping up in the first quarter of 2018 with our strategic plan. We'll continue our hiring process for our part-time and full-time personnel. Our part-time program has been working a full year now, implemented. Of the 6 part-time personnel that we've hired, 4 of them have become full-time members of our department. But we're continuing to work on that program. And the final item I have is the second week of January, the Insurance Service Office will be here in the city of Delaware, and they'll be looking at our fire department and doing an upgrade of our ISO rating here in the city. So it sort of got spawned by an email that I had to ISO, because annually they send us information to look at it. And for the past 4 years, and really since the inception of Station 303, the station noted any of their maps. And so I kept feeding the information, and ultimately they said, guess what, we're coming in now. So that's a very good thing for our fire department and for our city, and look forward to having them here.
Can you just quickly let ISO, what that
It's
means?
Insurance Services Office is the agency that comes in and looks at fire departments and also building departments, water system, and our communication systems, and provides a rating of the fire department to provide to insurance companies so they can develop their insurance based on that. So we're looking for an improvement in our ISO rating. If you remember, the last time in 2009, we were headed the opposite way. Our rating was getting worse because we did not have the staffing, the fire stations, and so forth. And we should see a significant improvement in that.
So what are we rated today?
Today we are rated 4, and it's on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the best and having no fire protection whatsoever. So we're in the top, I believe, 12% of the fire departments nationally that, and don't hold me to that number, but it's in the top echelon, and certainly want to make an improvement upon that.
You talk about insurance companies. Are you talking about insuring homeowners, business owners, and helping those ratings? Is that
Well,
what you're saying?
the Insurance Service Office is a conglomerate that insurance companies provide funding to. They go out and do the studies, provide that feedback to the individual insurance companies. And for instance, with the fire rating, those companies that provide for that service take a look at the number 4, and then will base and develop their premiums to charge homeowners or businesses and so forth off of. The ones that lowering past the lower than 4 really has a greater impact on the industrial versus the residential, but it will have an impact on our community. But if you have any questions on the budget at this point.
Anybody?
It goes into personnel distribution. We went from 19 part-time to 5 part-time.
Yes,
That won't increase by 5.
Well, and those are full-time equivalency ratio. What we're scheduled to have is 3 part-time personnel on each shift. So we're still looking at 9, but the amount of hours that they can work is only 1,500 per year. So that was an adjustment. That helped fund the full-time personnel because it is a struggle right now that everybody's facing trying to get personnel.
The other issue is it's a little misleading that 19.23 in the prior years, we never staffed at that level.
Yeah.
So those were filled. We got rid of a bunch of people.
And the other thing I had was just looking at the false alarms every year. Are those fire alarms or EMS alarms?
It's a combination thereof. And I hate the word false alarms. And I say that because that intent, looking at that, it sounds like it's a malicious event. It is not. However, the way the state and NFPA classifies that is anything that's truly not a fire, but an alarm gets activated is a false call. So as my kids, when they were living at home with me, when I'd start cooking my Sunday morning breakfast and the toast activated the fire alarm, that would be considered a false alarm. Where truly the system was designed to do.
Got a couple questions for you, Chief.
Sure.
And look at like EMS supplies, and just for clarification, does EMS supplies include like Narcan?
It includes every medication, every bandage, every IV, the needles that we use. I mean, every supply that we have. Yes.
Okay. So, and I see that that's fairly stable. It's like a 3% increase or something like that. So, just from my education standpoint, are we then not any real growth there in overdose calls within our area of responsibility?
And I'll have to go back again and look at the numbers in my my monthly report. I think we were a couple under from last year when I last looked at it. I think we've been very fortunate here in Delaware County. When you look at what's happening in Montgomery County, the Cincinnati, Claremont, and also Hamilton County, Butler County, and certainly north of us in Marion County, we're very fortunate. And I think that is a combination, the great work that our police officers and law enforcement is doing, but I also think it has the social services that we have available here. I know Chief Pijanowski has been working very hard on several programs using our service coordinators that we have and trying to address the drug program here, that if somebody ends up overdosing, we're working to get a service coordinator up to the hospital at that point in time to see if we can't get them into treatment at that point in time. Because obviously that's the most vulnerable period of time. With Narcan, I know we've all seen a lot and heard a lot about Narcan. And, you know, they're certainly trying to get it out, you know, the communities and to those that abuse them. That's really a stopgap. And looking at that, there has to be more than just providing Narcan. And that's where we're trying to take that different approach of education, following up. I know Chief Pijanowski sending a police officer after an overdose if they do not go to get treatment, sending a police officer and one of our service coordinators to go meet with them and hopefully trying to get them into treatment. Addiction is a horrible thing, whether it's alcohol, whether it is dealing with drugs, and that individual has to come to the point that they're ready to get treatment. And all we can do at this point in time is make every effort that we can to provide them that guidance to where they need to go.
So that is that more holistic approach towards treatment and making certain that people will actually, you know, kind of follow up. Because when I look back here and look at your activity budget, you know, you show like your EMS runs are expected to decrease, which I kind of found kind of odd. But then like your service calls, and I don't know what and if you can define for me what a service call is, are going to more than double. So, I mean, you know, we've talked in the past about how paramedicine is becoming more and more integral in a lot of people's, you know, lives. Just kind of wonder how that whole thing balances out.
And our runs are you look at it month to month, there's really no rhyme or reason for a lot of these type of calls. When I originally submitted my budget, if you look, there was going to, it actually, well, the city manager saw it, it almost looked like it was going to be a decrease in responses because the first part of this year was showing an actual potential decrease. We're doing less calls than what we had done in the previous years. Last night, when I looked at it, we were 4 days ahead of last year. So it sort of has changed and gone from almost 2 weeks behind now to 4 days ahead. I expect us to be over 6,000 calls, which is about 120 calls more than what we did last year. So looking at that, the EMS calls where we're seeing some of the EMS, some of that has shifted to the service calls because we are, a lot of those service calls that we're responding to are those lift assists. Somebody has fallen, it's not actually an EMS call that somebody is injured, but they need assistance up. And that's where this community paramedicine really focuses on. It's trying to keep those people at home so they do not become a burden on the healthcare system. We use our service coordinators to make sure that if we need to get home health care nurses in there, they can find the avenues to fund that for those individuals. So I think that's where you're really seeing some of those shift in those numbers. And if you look overall, there's a slight increase in next year's numbers as well.
Thank you, sir.
What are good intent?
Good intent calls would be smoke in the area. Type of calls. Somebody may have thought they smell gas. We get there, there's no gas there.
Any other questions? I love the approach that you're taking with this Narcan. I disagree with these cities that just want to teach everybody how to use it and make it readily available. We're just giving the ones that have the addiction a tool. Why not use it because they're going to save me? And I just like the approach that you're taking. So just from my perspective.
Not just with that, but with everything else, follow-up services for these older people that need it. I mean, it's great to know we've got such a comprehensive program.
And Chief Pijanowski is certainly, I don't think he's here yet. He's owed a lot. He has done a great job of that part. They see it a lot more frequently. We get there when the person gets that medical condition. But as you know, those type of issues, drugs, deal with a whole different set of circumstances. And there's other crimes that come along with that as well. And we should be very proud of our police department and the job they're doing. I'm very proud of what my guys are doing as well. And it takes a community, to rally around that. And I think that's what we're trying to do.
One policy issue is the EMS funding. And that's an issue that we've had with Delaware County for a number of years, and it was our immediate issue was kind of put on the side while we joined a coalition effort with some townships in order to try to address some of the inequities, if you will, regarding how the county provides reimbursement to the city. That's still an outstanding issue and one that probably want to take up when we do a joint meeting with the county commissioners. The rate that we're currently receiving hasn't changed since 07, 06.
I think we've only, since I've been here, have done one contract with them.
And so that's just as you know, the issue was we made a proposal, coalition put together a proposal, presented to the county. The county, through Commissioner Benton, provided something back to all of the communities, which was not what we were expecting, and it's still an outstanding issue. So I'm not sure. I mean, we've got to address it with them because outside of the issue of the global solution, which doesn't seem to be going anywhere, our immediate issue and Liberty Townships is what's that reimbursement rate and what should it be? And you may recall that we presented to Delaware County back before the coalition got formed a an approach which would have been a lump sum amount, as opposed, we'd get away from the per run basis, and we would go to an overall lump sum amount. And that then came back to us, and we went back and forth, and then the coalition kind of stepped in. And John, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think 2018 is an appropriate time to really start focus on this again. I just hope we've worked cooperatively, on this EMS system, if you will, or pre-hospital care system countywide. And funding needs to be part of that. Certainly, Delaware County has begun EMS billing, and that is included. And you've seen some of our citizens are now getting billed, and I know that there's a soft billing chewy component that our citizens shouldn't receive a bill. But there's a funding mechanism set up already for that countywide that we have been a part of, that we certainly have not received our fair share, and we do need to get that addressed this year.
And I think it's like the intent of your message, that's our primary issue, what they're paying us. I mean, the other thing is important, but
Yes, exactly.
our obligation to our taxpayers to get that
Yes.
Right. You mean the rate?
rate that they're paying us.
Yeah,
Exactly.
reimbursement.
Whether it's per run or
Yeah,
lump sum
exactly.
or whatever.
Okay.
And just one final point, I know I think I made it in the message, but I'll make it again, that this is an example, this operation and John's ability to grow that department responsibly is a function of a dedicated revenue stream. I mean, there's a dedicated revenue stream there, and that has enabled that department and the services it provides the city to grow commensurate with the growth of the city, and that's the envy of a lot of.
And we respect that, and we appreciate the confidence that you have in us, and also our citizens have in us too. And we're certainly going to do everything we can to make save the lives and property of our citizens here. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Very good.
Dad, if you want to come up. First of all, I want to say thank you for all your work. I know that you had a lot playing into the ice skating rink.
Oh, yeah, I think it was pretty successful last
Yes.
night. A lot of people there, so
Because you were out there skating the day before or something.
I had to test it out,
Okay.
make sure it worked. I guess this is about the first full year under my belt now. So I think we made a lot of progress in 2018 in Parks and Natural Resources. That specifically, we've what we want to continue to get more efficient, I guess, with our operations staff, because we are expanding, the US 23 interchange at Pennsylvania Avenue, and then next thing is going to be the Williams Street. We're going to expand our landscaping and bed and basically our operations work. So we're working on becoming more efficient. And one of the things that's going to happen probably next year at this time is our move to the Public Works facility, which will put us all together. And I think that'll help us to be more efficient and hopefully keep our level of service where it's at, and maybe even higher if we can. We want to continue to work on the downtown area. More lights on all the trees. Like, we have some fixes to do down there in some of the tree wells. So we want to continue to work in that area, working with Bill and his team. I think we've come up with some areas that we can work on. We also, I think when I talked to Tom about this wetland park, I think there's some opportunities out there to do some expansion. We have some land out there now, and just kind of opening up that a little bit more to expand the opportunities for citizens out there. And then Ross Street Park, with that move over to the Public Works, we're going to be looking at doing some, we've already started the public outreach, but we'll be looking at doing some improvements in that area also once we get some direction from the input from the public here. We've also made some strides at Mingo. It's a facility that we have that's been very useful, but it's also aging. So we are looking at getting some improvements up there. We've already started some new concrete work on the pool deck. Some of that concrete was failing, and getting that updated. And just some small things. New furniture in the Hillborn room. put up new lights, but we want to just kind of continue to make sure that that facility is going to be around for a while and keep making improvements out there. The other thing that's going to be kind of exciting coming up is the comprehensive plan, having some input on that. I think that's going to give us some good direction, specifically in our department, along with the city. So we're looking forward to that next year, and having input on that, and hopefully Parks and Recreation will get some direction in that also. Trail work, we're going to continue to move forward on some trail work. The Central Avenue, I know that's a priority. So we're going to look at doing some more links out there. And the Bruce Road, we've gotten a lot of public input this year. We want to kind of keep working on that, moving forward with that. And then also looking at grants to help leverage some of those dollars we have in there to get more of this trail work done. Because we have a lot of priorities out there, just finding a way to get them done. One of the things we're working on this year is also the YMCA agreement. That is moving forward. We've made some changes as we've grown with that, and we're working on updating that. But again, I think that, and Jackie knows this, that's become kind of a model. I think, and I was just at a conference this week, and a lot of people asking about that. Hilliard, Whitehall, how we do that. So I think that continues to be an effective model that people want to look at. With the Oak Grove Cemetery, that this year, the master plan, we're going to start that. So that is going to be a huge benefit out there. That's going to give us some direction out there and help shore up some of the things that we have going out there and help us be more efficient out there with that, and also expand that. We're running out of room out there and offering some different choices as that industry has changed. And so we'll be looking at some more items out there. The golf course, I know that's been a hot topic out here, but I think this year we're going to, when the actual numbers come in, I think we'll be doing better this year. I want to say, yeah, but just looking at it, we've done some changes out there. The Little Brown Jug Tournament has been a lot more successful. We're going to continue to work on that, but the youth program is something that we went through the sustainability committee. They wanted to improve youth attendance out there, and so we've made strides in that, and this year we want to do some more. One of the things we're looking at is working with the YMCA for more youth programs out there, but also there's a First Tee program that we are going to try to bring to Delaware, and that really involves the youth and gets them out on there, and that's a good partnership for that golf course, because that daytime hours when we would utilize that for that is some of our downtime. So hopefully we'll fill in some of those gaps and really make it more efficient out there. How we've made it better this year is we've been able to really take a look at our hours, our man hours down there, and cut down some of our especially our in the clubhouse, cut down some of those hours and save on some of those wages, and but also try to keep our level of service up. One of the things we want to do next year is some of our equipment is aging, and we want to try to implement a plan that we can hopefully replace that equipment over time, not in one big chunk. But when those actual numbers, right now, I looked at it yesterday, and we are, I'm reluctant to kind of say it, but I think we hopefully will, if break even or maybe make some profit out there. We still have the month of December to go, but we should make another $1,000 just with punch cards and Christmas gifts that come in that people buy. So
I was going to say, who's golfing in the snow? But
we do actually sell some memberships during the month of December also.
I know.
In urban forestry, as of right now, we have depleted our backlog of trees. So thank you, Council, for that. One of the things that we updated some of our code that we were able to utilize the tree fund, and we are officially out of planted every tree that we have on backlog. So that's good.
And that was from the ash borer request for trees?
Yeah, the ash borer mainly, because we lost a lot of trees. We're still losing trees in there, but we're kind of caught up right now. One of the things we're going to be doing in 2018 that we're kind of getting behind in right now is our pruning. We have we're up to over 17,000 trees now in the city. So pruning is going to be something, especially with young trees that need pruned more often. We've got a lot of young trees out there, so we're going to be pruning more, and you'll see in the budget we've allocated some more funds of professional services and and less to tree purchase. We just kind of move some of that money to professional services because I think I know we're going to be getting more requests and so we're preparing for that, and hopefully we'll be able to keep up with it and catch up a little bit more this year. But
Excuse me, but so that's what the doubling of the professional services from 25 to 50.
Correct.
Is trimming?
yes,
Services.
for contractors and dedicating more services to that because you're going to see more requests for that because we have so many young trees out there right now. But other than that, I'll open it up to any questions.
You didn't touch on the cherry trees, the growth that you're gonna put in.
Yes, well, briefly with the William Street improvements, we're looking at a,
East William Street project.
yeah, where the pedestrian bridge is now, they're replacing that pedestrian bridge and part of that work is landscaping that, the berm along there, which is a pretty big berm. And one of the things we're looking at doing is it worked out, we need an ornamental tree, so we chose looking at a cherry tree. And it'll be a pretty impressive grove. And I can't remember how many trees we're looking at, but it'll be pretty impressive. So, and we've got one planted out here now. That's kind of our trial.
That's the one on the.
Yeah, right out at the front along Sandusky. It's kind of our trial to see how that tree does. We think it's going to do pretty well, but before we jump into that completely, we want to make sure it's that we maintain.
So are you gonna have many public meetings with the people along William Street? I was at Walmart yesterday and a lady that lives right there next to ODOT said, I don't want to put any more money in my house until I know exactly what you guys are going to do, how much of my land you're going to take and all this stuff. So I think there's people curious as we get closer. I don't know if it's time to have a meeting with some of them, maybe in January.
With the actual road improvements and everything. I know I'll probably follow Bill's lead on that, but we'll attend those meetings and we've tried to update our Shade Tree Commission with those improvements and make sure we keep everybody up to speed on any of the improvements in there. So
Okay.
I'll kind of defer to Bill on that one a little bit more because that's kind of his project.
You're gonna get a lot of.
Yeah.
Comments. And that's one of the, I sent out last night,
Yes.
you may have seen it, the original purpose and need statement for that project. So everybody needs to refresh our memories about that project because it was back almost 10 years, if not more. And now we're starting to work on it. So it's important, but it doesn't eliminate the questions and comments and that we're going to get.
So when we take those trees out, are we going to replace them with other trees? Are we thinking shrubs? What are we going to do along there?
We're gonna replace, but we're not gonna replace them all along that street. We're gonna have to just choose some mitigation sites around the city, and but there's just not room in the tree right away in the area in the right of way to replace those. So we're looking at some other options. I know one of the things Matt and Bill are looking at is seeing if homeowners want to volunteer. We'd pay for the tree to put in their yard outside the right of way.
That's what I was thinking. I wonder how many already have a front yard tree but you could pick the next one to Dover.
Yeah.
A dozen or whatever.
Yeah, and one of the things with that tree is the told Tom is as the streets come in, there's a lot of streets that come into William, and the site triangle really limits the space that we can put trees out there. So that's going to be a hurdle to get over.
Right.
Yes, ma'am. So I think we need to have a conversation about the golf course every year. How many years now have we been saying one more year? 3 at least.
Yeah, and it's gotten, I mean, I think we said that last year, and one of the things we committed to was putting together that working sustainability working group. They made some recommendations, some of which we've implemented, some of which we haven't. We need guidance, direction from the city council. But I think the program is important to the community. I think the people value that part and that amenity. I really do. I think the way we've set it up as its own separate fund, it gets a lot of attention, understandably. But if you think about the airport, we provide a general fund subsidy that comes from the general fund into the airport annually. And I would argue that there's probably more residents who benefit from the golf course as a recreational amenity than the airport. That doesn't take away of the importance of the airport and what it provides to our residents and to our community in general. But one of the things we're looking at is how we allocate the costs of our superintendent out there. Right now, all of his costs are allocated 100% to that golf course. And what we're looking at doing is taking advantage of his skill sets and perhaps using him in some of our other parks for turf management and that type of thing. So we're capitalizing on that. But
I'd like to see us,
what would you like to see?
I'd like to see the expenditures match the revenues so that we're not taking that fund balance and leaving it at 5,000.
Right.
I think it's time for,
In that, you're right.
we're just kind of at the point where we've tried a bunch of things. I think it's moving in the right direction, but I would feel comfortable leaving more in the fund balance there. So trying to shore up the expenditures somehow to make them more in line with the revenue.
And the biggest piece of that is the wage piece. And you may have seen that health insurance went up because that there's just it's a larger cost this year for the superintendent in terms of that. But
Why did the operating supply increase so much from 15 to 18?
you're in 5330.
Yes.
It was 15 and 17. Do you have that, Ted?
The operation is, the increase is, I'm probably from fertilizer and just those operating costs that have gone up, the cost of supplies out there. Right now, we are, yeah, we allocated 15, but we are, that's probably going to end up being closer to probably on that one. We've got some money encumbered on that, but I think the big cost there is 3,500. That's probably going to come back out of there. So I don't think it's gone up completely 50, like from 10 to 15. I think it's going to be closer to 12 to 13 right now. But mainly just the cost of fertilization and supplies that go into that there.
I mean, I don't know what everybody else thinks, but does leaving the fund balance at 5290 kind of throw up a red flag to anyone else?
I look at it differently, I think, than you do. I think the golf course is an important recreational asset like a lot of our other parks. The question I think we need to decide is, do we expect it to be self-sustaining asset, or is it an asset that's subsidized by fees, but the city still has to cover the cost? And I would suggest it's one that's subsidized by the fees out there. I think it's worthwhile for the city to spend some money to provide that recreational asset. The question is, what do we think is a reasonable amount? And then once we decide on that, then where do we get the difference? Maybe 32,000 is too much to spend, but I think there's probably some level that we're willing to spend at the golf course.
I hear you, and I definitely have that as a competing argument inside my head. My concern is that because we're so in a pinch in terms of fixing the roads, that the golf course seems like such a luxury to be using general fund to support concerns me.
Roads are important, I don't doubt that, but I mean, if you take that argument that anything that's not roads, we're going to take the money from that. I don't think that's reasonable either. So I think, again, we need to go back and say, what are we willing to spend $20,000 a year to subsidize the golf course? To me, I think that would be reasonable. If that's the case, then we've got to make up that 12 somewhere. But I mean, $20,000 in terms of road maintenance and all that is not that big a deal. I think we have to find a balance. We can't just start shutting down everything and put all the money into roads. I just think it's too important to say, well, if we can't sustain itself, we're going to get rid of it.
Well, I think also, though, another piece of this, and something that allows us to provide funding for the golf course, is to open that facility up to things other than golf. You know, when we're talking about the bicycle master plan and putting that run down through there and getting, I think that as it sits right now, that land is dedicated just to golfing. And in that case, and I think our user fees are way too low.
Yeah.
And you also hear the same thing, I think our airport fees are way too low also. I think those users, and those are both very much great items from a consumer standpoint. I think if people want to participate in those things, they need to pay for them. Does it have to be 100% self-sufficient? No, but as long as it's only a golf course, I think it does. I think we need to open that up and provide some other type of recreational activities utilizing those facilities. And at that point, I don't have a problem subsidizing, but we're saying I have this however many acres out here and it's just golf, and there's only 16,000 rounds played all year. A lot of people go out there and play many times. I'd like to know how many unique, discrete users there are out of that 16,000 rounds. Is that 4,000 users? And if it is, and we're subsidizing $30,000, we're subsidizing everybody that plays there $7. I don't know. But I have no idea what that unique, and at 4,000 users, that's not a good use of funds, in my opinion. But if we can open that up and use those facilities for other things, then we're not necessarily, subsidizing Joe so we can go out there and golf, but we're actually, funding some other recreational activities utilizing those same facilities.
I think that's a good point.
There's some opportunity to do that with extending the greenway along the Delaware Run and opening that up a little bit more. If it was, I think it would be subsidized more if it was just a park. If we were just to eliminate the golf course and put it at just as a park, we'd be subsidizing it even more at that point.
Well, we wouldn't have any user fees.
Right. There would be no revenues. So that's something to consider too. But I think opening it up, and that's one of the things we want to try to do is kind of open this thing up to, not specifically just golf, looking at using some of these family nights where, the families come out and you put a larger hole out there that they kind of just play around with and everybody can kind of shoot towards it. So that's one of the things in 2018 we want to look at doing. And that would kind of open it up to a little bit more than just your pure golfer that wants to go out there.
What about in the winter? Could it be opened up for, I'm not very familiar with.
If we had snow, we could open it up for cross-country skiing. I mean,
Right.
and we've done that, but
I was just thinking sled riding.
our winters are just,
Too
yeah, you
Let's
could,
make
Mike,
snow.
you could, Lisa. You could,
I've never even been down there.
to the,
Oh, it's beautiful.
Never.
Well, I want this nice.
yeah, you want it. It's a little oasis. It's
Yeah,
really
it's
beautiful.
beautiful.
And that's why I think we really need to open it up.
Right.
But George, from that standpoint, are you thinking that if there's just more, it's more utilized as a park with pathways and those kinds of things that, that justify that?
Well, I think yes. I mean, because,
Is there cost to
now it's, because again, and Lisa's point was well made. She's not a golfer, so she's never been down there. If it was a park or had other facilities,
Got it.
amenities, yeah.
Okay.
So, I think if it opens up, and from Ted's standpoint, I think we might have talked about this at some point. Like having soccer golf,
Mm-hmm.
those type of things that then, again, it's
What the
just
heck is
it.
soccer
You use a soccer ball and you basically, it's like on a golf course. So you kick your ball and it's really a lot of fun. It's very family oriented. And it's, with the advent of soccer, there's a lot of people that get into that. But it's just another avenue. But I think whatever activities we offer also have to involve things that are off the golf course itself. So whether it's a nature center for bird watching, or it's a nature trail, or it's a BMX bicycle course, whatever it is, utilizing that land down there and getting more people down there.
Okay, I understand your point now.
Yeah, I think to George's point also that if we do that, I mean, most people that live on a golf course or, you know, that have a home on a golf course don't even golf. They just want the scenery and the attraction of it. So if we're opening it up to a trail or a greenway that people will appreciate it more, and people like Mr. Keller will be able to go out and appreciate it on the trail and not have to golf.
And that Willowbrook Trail will do a lot for that.
The Willowbrook Trail is gorgeous. It's a hidden gem.
Right. And that was just, you were on just one piece of it. I mean, if you can extend that all the way to Weir Street,
Right.
all the way over. The other, I don't know if I mentioned in my message, but we are still, and I'll look to Dave, negotiating with Verizon over a cell tower site there, which would provide an annual revenue, which would almost help balance our situation. It doesn't take away from the comments made about utilizing that, trying to capitalize on that more as a park and not take away from the golf part of it.
Right. That's key. You can't take away from the golf part.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, because that's, I don't know, can you do Frisbee golf? I don't know how that works, but typically.
Yeah, I mean, those are all opportunities. It's just, you know, getting the users out there. I think promoting more of that family atmosphere out there with the some of the larger hole. The problem with the soccer golf too is you kind of have to designate certain times where these are just soccer golf time and then not golf.
Of course, that ain't the process.
Yes, yeah.
Soccer golf is hugely popular.
So, yeah, because I mean, there's a course up in, I know in Detroit that where they have the soccer golf, but they tried doing them both together, but you know, there's only so many soccer golfers out there as opposed to golfers, and so they ended up designating certain times for soccer golf, certain times for golf. And
The only course I know of is in Newark around here.
Mhm.
People travel from all over to go to Newark to play that.
yeah,
Got pickleball, we may as well have soccer golf, right?
Well, to George's point, there's probably things that we can do to expand usage that doesn't involve taking away from the actual golf course.
Right.
And that's,
some of the things coming about like Frisbee golf. There might be some opportunities there with some of the wider fairways where we could, you know, maybe get some Frisbee golfers out there too.
The alcohol, beer sales was something that was recommended. And
Yeah,
the research that you did showed.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some possibility in that sustainability report that committee we put together at the beginning of the year. They proposed alcohol out there. You know, talking with other golf courses around that, and when we say alcohol, we're not promoting a bar atmosphere or everything like that. It's more of just the casual family that even wants to go out there that you want to take a drink. It's being done out there right now. Offering that sales out there, and a lot of golf courses have it. There wasn't many that did not have it, that just by estimating the one in the comparable course in Granville, they're a par 3 course just like ours. That's a $15,000 revenue stream for them every year.
Net?
Yes,
Net?
yes.
you take that in cell tower, we're in pretty good shape.
Yeah.
What needs to happen to do that?
We just have
I
to,
mean,
we have to get a,
procedure-wise.
actually, there's a cost. You would have to, the cost to do it, there is a cost to that.
Mhm.
You have to
Right.
get the
The
equipment.
coolers, the refrigerators and everything.
We had mapped all that out.
Yep.
Bring it to city council, and if you're interested in doing it, policy-wise, if you don't have an issue with it, then it's just making sure that you capture the expense somewhere in the budget. Ted's got to estimate what the revenue is going to be, and say that in 2018, you're going to pilot beer sales at the golf course with the expectation that that's going to help offset some of your costs. And then we'll have to see after a couple of years use, whether that helped, whether that's working. I think Jackie had worked on this 2 years ago. And it's just getting it before you and having the discussion. And
I'd like to make a motion that we revise the golf course budget to include beer sales and whatever expenditures are necessary to make that happen in the 2018 budget, and then come back to us at a different budget hearing with that to rediscuss
okay,
this as an expenditure.
we can on Monday night, Lisa, have that information. We just have to take a look and just update it. But yeah, we can do that, provide it.
And sometimes beer distributors will help you with that cooler.
Correct.
Especially if this is going to be a trial basis,
Mhm.
that we wouldn't have that huge expense right up front.
Yep, and Jackie had already looked into that, and I still have all those notes. so.
Okay, good.
But we
And-
don't have to put a Dora down there. This is just,
We would have to look.
Pardon?
We'd have to have a look.
Yes.
Yep, and then Jackie looked with the permit from the state and everything, so.
So we'll provide that Monday night.
I second.
I second. Change it.
Are you asking for a change in the budget, or are you asking for the information?
No, I made a motion to have the city manager revise it to include beer sales and get back to us at the next budget session
Okay.
with the revised.
We'll have a revised budget.
Okay, so I have a motion by Ms. Keller, second by Mr. Browning. Roll call.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes.
Okay, so Monday night, we'll present you a revised budget which reflects that.
Okay.
And,
We'll see you again on Monday night.
Okay, all right. Is there anything else on that?
The only other, just real quickly, on rec levy funds, there is still a balance. We'll be getting a memorandum out to the rec levy
Oh, yeah.
subcommittee of city council regarding obligating the balance of those funds. We're trying to do that in 2017. I don't know if we're going to be able to get all of it obligated in 17, so there might be a balance carry that might be a small amount that we'd be carrying forward in 2018. Most of it's going to go towards signage. It's complete. The sign package throughout all of the parks, and then there was the the blue limestone basketball court,
Correct.
and there's some further.
It won't complete the sign package. I mean, there's a lot of signs to go in the parks, but we kind of focused on our community parks a little bit with that.
And one of the things we talked about at Hidden Valley was a sign out there that would provide some sort of LED, basically just highlighting, here's the special of the month, or, come visit the park, come visit Hidden Valley. So we're going to try to use the signage as a way to get more.
Because of people.
Pardon?
People don't know.
Right.
Just don't even know we
So,
have a
Jim,
golf
we-
course.
people on the lead.
So where are we at on the basketball courts at Blue Limestone?
The chief and I need to go look at this surface. I think originally the last time we left this, we were looking at raising the court so it would be out of the floodplain, because Blue Limestone has kind of become a floodable park at this point. We're looking at alternatives where we can cut those costs down by using a concrete surface, but then also get that sport court on top that is not sprayed onto the court itself. It's kind of like what's at Mingo Gym right now. And I think this will be a cheaper alternative, but we want to go look at one that's installed in Columbus and make sure this is something that will work for us down here.
So do we anticipate it by 18?
Yeah, I think that's a possibility, because I think we're at this point, we're ready to move forward with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, the other, just real quick, on basketball, the other thing we don't want to overlook, obviously, is the opportunity, discussing with the school board, is Willis basketball courts. You saw last night an example of using those courts for ice skating, and people flocked over there. I think there's an opportunity, I think, to utilize
Absolutely.
those courts during the summer, during the spring, during the fall. And I believe that there's a development proposal, Dave, for the old print shop. And if that occurs, I know the school was looking at one point trying to make a parking lot there, but I think if that moves ahead, that kind of precludes that.
Yeah, they want to build a two-story.
Is it-
building,
Yeah.
Is this a health club or something?
So it's a mixed use. Like a
Residential upstairs.
a boutique
It
exercise.
would do what you said,
Okay,
include that in a driveway.
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Which I
Yeah,
think
at
would-
which point, I think that's huge, and I made
Yeah.
that statement before, more of an urban setting basketball court, which actually extends that activity cone of downtown more to the west,
Yeah.
which actually then maybe people realize there's lots of parking downtown if you're willing to walk more than a block. Because that's right on the edge of all that available parking, which is
Right.
grossly underutilized.
Plus, a lot of the infrastructure is in place, ready, so it's something
Yeah,
we can
that
turn
court
around.
is almost ready-made,
Yeah.
as Ted
Yeah.
was saying. So.
Yeah.
I have a question going back to the cemetery.
Mhm.
What are our plans for the old cemetery office house? Yeah, I mean, I sure we're still heating it, we still got, of course, we have plenty for other things, but are we gonna do something with that?
I think it should be a great homeless shelter.
I think the master plan could help inform us on that, George, using that process. Really, the options are take it down, just raise it. And it's outside the historical preservation boundary, so I don't think there'd be an issue in taking it down. Second is repurpose, remodel it and lease it and let it provide some income. It's kind of an unusual location for a lease, but our cemetery, Carol Ringley will tell you that when it was Oak Grove's cemetery, there were a lot of people approached them about leasing that piece of property there. So that's a possibility. So I think as part of the master plan,
Yes,
think
that's part of the scope.
knowing that this is one of those assets that we have that we just kind of inherited, what do you do with it? We need to figure that out.
Okay.
Could be I don't.
And then I have another budget question, which is not specific just to Parks and Rec, because I see it as pretty much everything as I go down through here. Why is our garage rotary fees going up so drastically across, in various parks it has, but if you look in most of these other budgets, they're going up 50, 60, 70%. Why is that? Is there we're not buying that many more vehicles. I think for one of these here, I see it's like up 60%. Yeah.
It really has to do more with the allocation to the various departments based on their needs from the prior year. Down at Public Works, they try to track on a per vehicle basis what their time is spent on. And in total, if you add up everybody's allocation, in 2017, the total allocations to all the departments was $645,000. In 2018 budget, it's $652,000. So the overall garage rotary budget's only going up a little over 1%. Individually, there are some situations. I think golf course is one of them. It went from 74% increase. And it's a small amount. Sewer collection went down 10%. I don't track it, but they do. Bill can speak to that down at the garage. It could be that Parks had a lot of vehicle maintenance in 2017. Usually we track it for a year, and that's what gets used as the basis for the allocation the next year. So that can change from year to year. But overall, the garage rotary budget in total is not really increasing a whole lot. It's just how it gets allocated to some of the departments.
Okay.
Yeah, and speaking to the golf course, some of the equipment's getting older, so it's coming down to the garage more often. I think is the main thing.
Yeah.
Do you want to make more sense to do that garage rotary like on a 3-year average? So if their budget happens to spike one year because it's a maintenance problem, maybe be more reflective if we did a 3-year average. I don't know. It is. It is a 3-year average.
Some elements of it are, and it's the same thing with our IT rotary allocation. Yeah. Sometimes, we kind of look at that over, because otherwise in these individualized budget, it just tends to create bigger issues.
Any other questions for Ted? Okay.
Thank you.
Good night.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, next we have Dave Eflin. Good morning.
Morning. We were asked to turn in level funded budgets to the manager, and that's what we did. So I'm not sure there's a lot to talk about budget wise unless you have questions, but I think what I normally do is provide you a little bit of a summary of a development plan update. I know it's in Tom's message, but I want to do that this morning together with highlighting just a couple of items that we're looking at doing. 2017, I was just looking at the numbers through November this morning, and it does look like we're tracking right on about 240 total new residential permits. We may top that depending on some subdivisions that are actually coming online just right now. For example, we have about 20 house permits already in for Curtis Farms, but we haven't finished the platting and public acceptance for that subdivision. So these things can change quickly. As soon as a section is in and accepted, we're seeing a lot of permits in the housing market in general here in Delaware, which is strong. We're up over 200 single-family residential permits for this year, which makes it the second highest since 2005. It's a pretty strong year. Commercial, for the sixth straight year, we're over 200 permits for commercial in a commercial
How many?
environment. Over 200, sixth straight year. Commercial environment nationally, which was pretty tough in 2017.
So what does that entail? Is that?
That can be new, can be additions. Sometimes the additions are major. My typical example is a mezzanine at Advanced Auto. It's a pretty major addition to, what you might think of as a small project in downtown, but could be pretty impactful to the downtown. So it runs that whole range. But still pretty impressive, I think, overall for the commercial environment generally. In 2018, we anticipate about the same level of development. It could be quite a bit more in residential permits with Treplus coming through for final development plan now and looking to construct next year. That's the senior apartments on the west side of town. I was talking to Jane Arthur the other day, and she's very excited. They had a nice piece in the Columbus Dispatch on Treplus a couple of weeks ago. I don't know if some of you caught that, the home section. But she said they haven't even started, obviously, marketing Delaware yet since they don't have their final development plan in. But she had Delawareans calling her and arriving down at their development in Dublin seeking to rent the non-existent development here.
After the article?
After the article. Quite a few of them. So she said it was by and large Delawareans doing that. So good sign of the market and her product and the development. So I'm excited about that. The phase 2B of Quail Pass is getting ready it's the apartments on the east side behind Meyer, which is 12 buildings and about 60 dwelling units. Will get going in earnest in 2018 as well. So kind of have the boom bust of the multifamily, the non-single family, if you will. It looks like 2018 is setting up to be a little bit of a boom year, and it's going to be a strong single family year as well.
While I believe that, I also think that while we all voted for the school levy, it's retroactive, and I don't think people realize that. I cannot tell you how many phone calls I've had because they've been checking their taxes, and I'm thinking we're going to get a lot of people sell their house because now they're going to be able to afford them. I mean, even the closings that I'm having, and people arguing, that's not my taxes. I said, yes, it is. They already passed. And when they went up, quite a bit, they're like, I can't afford to stay here. So I think that's going to play into it.
Right now, the market for sales is so low, we're the lowest we've ever been.
Exactly.
So I don't know what's going to happen.
How about the levy?
Looking in general, talking to my regional colleagues and the developers, I think demand's still high. Supply is still very low across a number of unit types, but particularly the various single-family unit types we're seeing. And that's really the biggest change in the market I've seen in the last couple of years. And what I see moving forward is the change we're going to have a range of single-family kinds of units, from condominiums to landominiums. We've talked about that, to detached single-family, of course. The fourth high school with Olentangy will open next year, and there has been a tremendous amount of activity in the county and in the city down in that area, really as a result of that, but also as a result of everything else that we do well as a city. People make those locational decisions on a variety of factors. Schools is obviously a big one. But I agree with you. I think we have to kind of see how national tax policy plays out here over the course of the next week or so. What they do just early this morning, from what I read. So that could have an impact. And interest rates are rising just a bit, but they're still very low. So it's more a sort of a perception thing. So 2018 looks to be a big residential year from my perspective. Of course, we take that month by month.
Yes.
Dave, your estimate of population increase, can you just review that?
Yeah.
Council?
Keep going down here real quick, and then I'll get to that, Tom. Blanket permits, which are those things that are decks, fences, basement finish outs. It's basically people putting money back into their homes in various ways. They're all residential. That'll be over 700 this year, which is a very strong year as well. And it leads to a lot of the numbers you see in our inspections, which are, we'll be over 9,000 separate inspections this year with basically 4 inspectors, which is quite a volume. But that happens when you have big permit years. So overall, that's a healthy thing, and we think that's a sustainable level for now. Just want to mention the downtown facade grant. As Lee likes to say, the little program that could, I love that. But it really has been a fantastic program, one of the ones I'm most proud of. We've completed, since 2012, completed 27 projects in downtown, totaling over $900,000 of investment. And we're leveraging over dollar for dollar. For every public dollar we put in, we're getting over $1 of private investment, which is exactly what we kind of wanted to do. We've also gone through the steps to add the east side area, as we've talked about with the state. We're finishing that up. They've changed some things, how they're doing it, but we'll be able to add that. The funding for it is down a little bit this year. You've probably seen that in the revolving loan fund. It's Fund 295 if you're in your budget, but that's really related. It comes out of this revolving loan fund, and Precision Tower took their second draw, which they could have, which leaves not as much budget in there, but we did allocate $75,000 for next year, and we have a number of people in the core downtown interested. We haven't even really started marketing to the east side yet. So as those loans are paid back, that fund will, hopefully we can do more. Population, I just did through November, and on the high side projection, we went over 40,000 people as expected. So not quite ready to say that overall yet, but another couple months and somebody can cut a ribbon or something.
You could have announced it last night. It would not have been a surprise
No.
to anybody.
It probably had all 40 down here last. I didn't have a chance to
No,
tell.
I wasn't here.
That wasn't here.
Just projecting out a little bit, Tom asked me to do that based on our pipeline, our growth rates, both sort of 20-year and the last 10 years, which is probably a little better way to do it. We're looking at this is always a little bit dangerous the farther out you get, but by 2030, getting close to about 50,000 people just based on our current pipeline and development trends. Again, MORPC, Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission has estimated the Columbus region to be essentially the only growing region in the state over the 2050 period, and growing about 1 million, 1.5 million. They've been revising it upward here lately. People coming to our region. Obviously, we're going to capture in Delaware County quite a bit of that. So that's an interesting number and pretty staggering. If you think that we're at 40,000 now, and that's double the population of the city from 1990. Some of you have been here that long, so you've seen a lot of change. We've seen about 14% growth since 2010. And it continues, and that's, a testament to how everything we do as a city, and not just the market, not just the schools.
Dave, is that
My
build
opinion.
out in your
That's
opinion?
that's build out of
Not
the.
build out in terms of our utility boundary areas?
No, by about 20, again, this gets very dangerous, but to guess at this, but by about 2040, build out of the boundary as it sits today, particularly south of the city. North, it gets a little less clear. We're getting close to 59,000 people.
Okay, so that would be the southeast.
Primarily the southeast area, yeah, between Curve and Berlin Station Road. There's several thousand acres in there.
And that's, I think, that'll be one of the themes of the updating of the comprehensive plan, is where, what are the limits
And that's the last thing I was really going to mention today is the comprehensive plan. We're looking to contract that in the next 14 days. We did get 5 responses from teams of consultants that were easily the best in Ohio and some of the best in the country. So that was great to see. Staff from my department, Bill, Ted, Lee, Sean have reviewed those. I'm still tabulating them, but I think on Monday I'll have recommendations. There's a pretty clear team that's emerged from that process for Tom in that regard. So I'm excited by it. The team is really top notch. It will include obviously a ton of public involvement.
I've already had people ask me, how can I get on it?
Yeah, and I think it's probably a steering committee approach with lots of a mixture of face-to-face meetings, online engagement, civic engagement across a broad spectrum of platforms. The team that I think I'm going to recommend to Tom looks like, I don't have it right in front of me, but they had on upwards of about 30 steering committee meetings alone, plus public involvement sessions within their proposal, which was far and away, but I think the right way to do it. And the team we're really looking at is one that's very adept at public engagement, visioning, but then also taking that vision and boiling it down in strategic ways, understanding our fiscal constraints and those kinds of things. So I'm excited. I knew every one of the teams, save one that was out of Chicago that I had never worked with before. So I can speak with some experience for the responses that we got back. That's really all I had this morning. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yes. I have just, I don't know if it's, now it's not really a Dave question necessarily, but just some policy issue that I keep mulling over. Is with these population increase trends, I see a couple questions that we have to ask ourselves. And the first one is regarding the fees that keep coming up with the BIA. And as policy decisions, how much do we want to speed up that development process versus using those fees to keep it slower, just from a policy standpoint there. And then the next thing is more of an economic development impact. Where are all of these people going to work? Because if our population goes up to people, but our economic development doesn't step up somewhere, they're going to be taking all of that tax revenue with them to wherever they're working. Because people who are building $500,000 houses probably aren't. The job market within our city is not matching where we're trending with our housing and our development. And I see this as just a big issue that we need to tackle somehow, because it's not going to get better, it's just going to exacerbate the issues that we have now. Not being able to pave our roads, wait till we have how many new subdivisions? How many parks will we have to take care of when our population is reaching that? How many more city staff members are we going to need to manage all of the demands that this development will present to us? We have to have somewhere for these people to work so they're not taking their revenue with them to Dublin and Powell. Just planning for that and really trying to I almost feel like planning and economic development need to be discussed together. And that those two departments need to somehow make these projections and work collaboratively, because if we think we have an issue now, if we don't do something now, then we're burdening the council 10 or 15 years from now with a complete problem.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. There's some very important policy questions that we all need to decide. Sean and Kelsey and I yesterday attended that Economic Development 411 at the House State. I've gone every year. It's really very good conference, some great speakers, and breakout sessions with people from successful communities talking about how and why they got there. I mean, I think that's an issue that we really need to you know, revamp in terms of what are our economic development goals, because it all comes down to that. You know, we're looking at our budget and say, well, we can sustain what we've got, but we really would like to go here. Economic development is the thing that's going to drive that, and the cities that are really good at it, and they're not all big cities, you know, and but the cities are really good at it, learn how to do it in the right way, and I think there's lessons that we can learn from that. So I think that's a huge area that we really need to make some major decisions on as we move ahead.
So the first part of your question, Lisa, the second part of your question is harder to answer. That's a tough question. Hopefully we can work through that as part of that process. But the first part, in terms of fees, one of the policy issues I identified in the message was the impact fees. So we have a report, still a draft report, something I'd like to perhaps take up at the retreat, have a presentation made about the justification for some of the increases, how you balance that with what the BIA is saying. But that's definitely, those were put in place in the early 2000s to help offset the impacts the growth has. They can only do it obviously with respect to capital items, new parks, adding new capacity, those kinds of things. So that's something that we really do need to address, and it's kind of part and parcel of these ongoing conversations we're having with the BIA about our fees. The second part is harder. It's just the fiscal sustainability of growth. And if you go back in time and look at where the city was in 1990, and if you were sitting here and city council was probably going through the same issues about growth and the cost of growth, and said the city was going to be a population of 40,000 in 2017, how are we going to sustain ourselves? That would have been, you know, it could have been sky is falling. We've done a pretty good job of doing that, I think, in terms of growing the economic base. But it's there's, I don't know if I have a good answer for the second part of your question. I think part of this analysis of the land use plan needs to have a fiscal side to it, and it needs to be more than just the, you know, growth will pay for itself kind of perfunctory statement. It really needs to, I think, do a little, be a little more substantive in terms of, you know, how we can sustain ourselves, and what are the limits of growth. So,
I mean, I'd just add, it's sort of like what we talked about in the parking plan. It's a high quality problem to have. I mean, I can tell you from direct experience, having worked in the city of Cincinnati, an impacted urban community that had lost population for 60 years. 60. That is unsustainable on its face. So the sky's not falling. I mean, I guess that's a message I have for you. It's easier to try to manage the growth than to have none at all. Not discounting anything you're saying, I agree with it. We're at about that 200 to 300 unit pace for the last several years, which I think's pretty sustainable for us over that 20-25 year horizon. You know, there were a couple times when we were 400 or 500 a year, and that puts a lot of strain on a lot of systems throughout the city, and then has, you know, legacy impacts as well that you're talking about. So I think we're still in that sort of fairly comfortable growth realm, and we obviously monitor that all the time and try to report it out to you. We do work, I just want to note, we do work closely with Sean and Kelsey and that staff as well. I was just at a conference in Dayton yesterday, and there were many communities that wish they had our kind of downtown and our kind of development and our school systems and the kinds of things we're talking about, even as we're struggle every year to figure out how to pay for roads in particular and other things.
I think there's a different level of sustainability. We may be able to sustain dealing with 200 new houses from your perspective, but I tend to agree with Lisa. Financial sustainability, we're pinched. Back in 1990, it was here, and the big issue of sorts was, you know, our income tax and what that would do for us, how that would play out. Back then, if we were looking at a new revenue source, we would tend to say an income tax is the way to go. It grows with inflation. Unlike the schools that were struggling with their property tax every year, they have to, you know, it doesn't grow because of some of the state legislation years ago. Dynamics have changed. And the one issue she brought up, again, this notion that people are living here, we're becoming more and more of a bedroom community. I'm not so sure our reduced income tax issue is sustainable. We talk about it every time we put a potential levy out there. There are people moving here that look at it and say, hey, I pay 2.5% to Columbus. Why do I have to pay even more to Delaware? If I add it up, I pay twice as much as what the citizens of Delaware pay in income tax. That creates a huge dilemma. Plus, the state's getting more and more aggressive with what involvement they have at a local level, especially with the municipal income tax, because they don't like it in general, regardless of whether it's consistent from one city to the next. One of the things that we've always stayed away from, just arguably to be a good neighbor, was a property tax. That was the revenue stream that primarily funded the schools. A property tax addresses that issue of a bedroom community, because if they own a $500,000 house here and work in downtown Columbus, their property tax is going to be based on where they live, and that's here. I think we need to think about those things a part of as we project out what this growth does to us, because again, it's a different type of sustainability. We may be able to sustain a 200 level growth of residential housing, but and even if we do look maybe more openly at what type of revenue source, we're still somewhat dependent on the taxpayers approving it. And that becomes a double-edged sword too, because the more people that move here that work elsewhere, they're kind of not too inclined to want to pay for any additional taxes, because they see that huge issue with the income tax, what they perceive to be a disparity.
Well, that's a good point, because, that budget that the federal government passed last night eliminated the SALT deductions, which means, the state and local taxes, which means if you work in one county, live in another,
right.
I don't quite fully understand. They said that your tax rate could triple?
Well, the other,
that effect?
The other part that works for a little bit of disadvantage, which at least what's being talked about out there, is this shift back to that they may still allow a property tax exemption up to $10,000. Right. Well, that was always the issue. If you live in most states other than Ohio, I'm sure you've heard this before, their revenue source is primarily a property tax and or a sales tax, even at a local level. So if I live and to a certain extent, there were places that were even rolling their utility costs in their property tax bill because it was deductible on your federal return. Here are what we pay for water and sewer isn't. But as long as that property tax amount was, you get a deduction. So, if they allow a much higher, $10,000 up to, is what I've heard, property tax deduction, but they take away the deduction state and local tax. I don't know if many of those people buying those 200 houses get to that level, but at some point, you have to deal with what's changing around us. And I think that reliance on income tax at some point may need to be considered.
Correct. It gets back to Lisa's point about economic development, when you bring those jobs into Delaware, then that helps our bottom line. And so that's where we've got to be more aggressive, I think, than we can.
Just looking at the community last night, this is a fantastic place to live. The downtown and our access to Columbus and other places, people are wanting to be here more and more and more. And that's a great thing.
I ran into a lady last night that lives on River Road, not far here. She's never been downtown. She's lived there for 12 years. Her and her husband work in Columbus, do everything in Columbus. And for some reason, somebody invited her last night. And I listened to her for 2 hours go on about how great downtown was and had no idea what she's been missing. She's like, this happens every first of the month. And I went, yeah, every first Friday, this is what happens. And she's like, how are you guys doing this? Why doesn't everybody know? And I went, they do know, look outside.
Yes.
So it was just amazing to me. But she loves Delaware, and she loves River Road.
I think, Lisa, the experts that will be assisting us with this process get asked this question a lot, and they can help inform us about how you respond to it and how that gets put into the plan in a way that addresses what Dean was saying in terms of the fiscal resiliency of the community to sustain that type of growth. And there's that'll be part of the process.
Just how do we target more, how are we targeting companies with higher paid positions?
Yeah.
More white collar rather than blue collar, because, or something they have to match. If the new housing that we're building supports a blue collar community, okay. But what I see is that we have a lot of blue collar economic development opportunities, but we are getting a white collar community.
Yeah, right. And that's where if you look at the region is supporting some of those white collar professional jobs. We are to some extent, but we're still the lion's share. If you drive out in the industrial park,
Right.
Are manufacturing related.
And that's great.
And
There's nothing,
there's an important
nothing
role
at
for
all
that,
wrong with
absolutely,
that.
right.
But I would love, when I'm looking at this sea of people want to work here. I mean, wouldn't it be great if they had software jobs or some of those that they don't have to drive
So,
to Powell and Dublin?
Perfect example of that is the business right next to Monarchic's Cleaners. It's a software development company, folks used to do with Cardinal Health. If you just look at that building today versus what it was 2 years ago, which was a storefront church, which was okay, and before that it was the chamber office, and before that I can't remember what it was. But today it's software engineers in there in a kind of cool work environment. Hopefully can help add to that sustainability. I think that's what you're talking about. Getting 3,000 of those jobs in one building is more challenging because we're so far outside the Beltway. You get those more around the Hilliards and the Kahanas and Dublins. Not to say you can't get them here, but
What about along 23?
well, I think that health, that's what hopefully we'll be looking at. But it has that potential.
One of the speakers yesterday, one of the lead speakers talked about, he sees the next technology revolution taking place in the Midwest. And there's a lot of reasons why I'm not confident to tell you why he thinks that's going to happen as opposed to the West Coast. But I mean, this area could potentially be really rich in those kind of jobs. And we do have areas, we've got Sawmill Parkway coming in, but again, we have to have a plan for how we're going to do that. And on a smaller scale, giving Cohatch here is a chance to hatch some local businesses that will help us with jobs.
Maybe a retreat topic?
Yeah, that's absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Does anybody need a quick
Yeah.
break before we
Yes.
start on Bill? Sorry, Bill. He's like, yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Voters needed these glasses.
Okay, we ready?
I know, I liked it. Good job.
Oh, wait. Oh, he's over there. Okay. Good morning.
Good morning.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Chris said 10 minutes. I'd love to.
I'll start your time.
I got 8 budgets, but I have summarized, and we'll just highlight what I think our operations budget will allow, and the things you may be interested in. I'm just going to start talking about the airport real quickly. I think the airport operation is meeting the expectations out there of our tenants. Our fuel sales do remain strong out there. Our staffing is capable of meeting all the needs and demands out there at the current levels. Our major resurfacing projects have all been successful. All of our main runway and trackway pavement now is what we call green or new. But we will go into about 4-year process starting in 19 of resurfacing the pavement in between our T hangars, some of it which is now 25 years old and in need of that. In terms of the issues of the airport, I think probably the biggest pending one out there is what do we do with the airport as we go forward? We talked about a business plan. The outline for RFP is with the city manager's office right now. Jackie's giving me feedback. We're ready to put that out and bring on a consultant to tell us what business-wise in terms of how do we use our airport. Right now, we're reactive. We sell fuel, we rent space basically out there. We have a couple land lease agreements. Is there something more we should be doing? Should we be building corporate T hangars, corporate hangar space, more T hangar space? What are the trends in the industry out there? So we're trying to bring somebody on board who has familiarity with municipal size airport, size of Delaware's airport, and get some recommendations back, not only the trends, but also our fees. Look at our fee structure. I heard that talked about. Our lease rates, our fueling pricing structure, and try to identify some ways that if there are ways to tweak what we do or make wholesale changes to what we do to give us something to contemplate in the future. Because airport, much like we listened to with the golf course, is somewhat subsidized operation. It does serve an important need, I think, in the city. But hopefully a business plan will tell us if we can really work with what we have and leverage that into a far more important part, maybe economic development. But that's where we want to go with the airport. And our budget we have proposed that will sustain these efforts into 2018. So if there's no questions on the airport, Chris?
Yeah, the hangar rentals, are we at capacity with hangars or what's the?
Yes, we are. We have just 98 hangars, T hangars, and we are virtually, I want to say full all the time. We have a list of people wanting to get in. So some would say we should build more hangars. Others would say our rate's too low if we're full all the time. So that's the kind of question that I think a business plan will help determine.
So that revenue essentially wouldn't really change if we're.
Once we increase.
Unless we raised the rate.
We increase the rates, right?
And we talked about, when I was on the airport commission, we talked about raising rates. I see in the narrative
Yes.
now it says the rates are finally going to be raised.
Well, we want to make sure, we did agree, I think the airport commission said they're amenable to having a rate increase. We put that on hold because if we do a rate increase, we want to make sure it coincides with a business plan, what the recommendations come from. In other words, if they say raise them 10% or 15%, the market can bear that, and we do a 4% increase, are we going to come back and raise rates again? So we thought it was prudent. This business plan is a fairly short turnaround time as well. By the halfway through the second quarter, we should have results and then be able to initiate T hangar rental rate increases if that's what we believe is the appropriate thing to do. And that remains will of council.
At the time that, again, back when I was on the airport commission, we did the comparative rates, with the surrounding, with the Marions and the Marysvilles and Don Scott, and, all the surrounding airports. And we came out and I thought it was pretty apparent that we should have some type of increase. And I know I was probably the outlier on there, and I continue to express this concern on our various boards and commissions. The Airport Commission is a great example of that. Pretty much everybody that's on that has a vested interest.
Yeah, they run a hangar.
They have their airplanes out. They don't want to raise the rates.
You don't want that? I do not. Okay.
But that and that is, I think a downside of how we put people on these boards. There shouldn't be everybody that's in, you know, if we had a marina, I wouldn't want everybody that's, you know, has yachts to be on that thing because it's very self-serving.
And beyond that, we want people who bring expertise to that discussion, local business people and those kind of people on it.
Yes, and, you know, just the fact that we haven't raised rates. And when was the last time that we raised rates? I mean, it's been several years.
Yes, several years.
So, I mean, I think once we determine what that rate is, you know, if it's, I think that something like the airport hangar rates should be some type of index and just automatically increase. You know, whether it's some type of COLA number or whatever, so we don't get behind that. We see this too often. We set a rate, and now it's been that way for 10 years, and we're covering our costs.
I agree 100%.
You know, just index it and let it fly.
We voted to increase them, we just didn't decide on the amount, which is probably a distinction without a difference, I guess.
Well, but I think this $40,000 makes sense.
Yeah, by committee.
Yeah, I think what was discussed was up to 5% increase in the rate, and the answer of what will that do for us long-term wise, it didn't really.
So you're
have an
saying,
answer.
again, I'm sorry, you're doing a consultant to?
Yes.
Okay, and that's happening how soon?
As soon as we're in the final phases, getting ready to actually advertise that RFP to bring that consultant on. So we hope to have him on by the end of, I would anticipate by mid-January, we'll have that consultant on board. And we put it like, again, a very aggressive time frame. By April or so, we should have a series of recommendations back to council regarding potential strategies for the airport, including recommendation on rates, fees, things like that.
See, and I know one of the things that we've also bannered around here a little bit in the past is the potential making that more of a regional airport and getting the county involved with that, you know, ceding some ownership of that because a lot of the people that are out there, probably the majority of the people that are out there don't actually live, you know, when you look at your hangar rentals, for instance, or people that have planes and tie downs, probably don't live in the city. I mean, it's really a county-wide airport. And it would help us get out from underneath this annual general fund transfer to provide it. And I mean, you know, even our airport commission specifically has seats for people that aren't in the city. So, you know,
Incentivize the county to want to spend that money.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
Well, I don't know, but there has to be it's definitely a county asset.
Well, I agree.
You know, I think it would be, I think we just need to look at that and consider that because at the end of the day, the airport itself is not, it's beneficial and we like that it's in the city, but even if we ceded full ownership of that, so here, county commissioners, take this over, the county took it over, we would still have the same benefits that we have today from it. Okay, I mean, nothing would change. It isn't, they can't pick up the airport and move it. It's still, you know, on the south side of our town. It would still potentially be an asset that could be used to leverage different businesses.
Development asset, sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Just something, I think that's, again, a policy decision that maybe we want to continue to look at and
And I think
consider.
years ago, they wanted to take it over.
We had conversations with them. At that time, Councilman Moore was adamant that the city retained it, but most general aviation airports in Ohio are county operations. This was like, you know, one of the kind of an anomaly that way, but there's definitely some reasons to discuss that. Maybe that's a joint meeting topic with the commissioners. But yeah.
Again, I just think we need to present them some reason, some incentives for them to want to do.
Right.
Oh, sure. Let's go to the county commission and hey, we should carve out part of your budget to pay for the
Right.
airport. Right.
Yeah.
You know, what's the incentive for that?
Oh,
Well, maybe
this
it's a joint ownership, kind of like the fairgrounds is joint, because county owns some and we own some.
Yeah. Well, it would be, it would just be, it would probably end up being just I don't know what that would actually look.
Right.
I don't know exactly how, but, you know, we would continue probably to, maybe they would own it and we would continue to
Run
be
it.
the contracting one to run it or something like that.
Mhm.
You know. Bill, I have a question on just looking at some of your metrics and.
George, you're in the programmatic?
No, I'm still actually up front. I think at least that's what the note is.
What page are you on?
Front. I'm on
That helps.
66.
Okay.
I saw that some of the fees, like the jet fuel and the ground power unit, the call-out fees, are all projected to be lower in 2018 than in prior years. And why do we foresee a slowdown from, you know, that corporate jet standpoint? Or
That's a good question. It's very hard to project on the corporate jet side because we don't really, we have a couple based aircraft. Most of our corporate jet traffic is passed through. Sometimes it's higher than others. Certainly the new runway extension has helped the existing customers have more utility out of our airport. But we want to be able to project and say because of runway extension, we are going to have more corporate traffic, but we can't house them. And that's the question that, you know, we're trying to, should we be housing this corporate traffic and then all the subsequent associated fees with that, helping them out, fueling them, transporting them, tugging around would increase. So it's kind of, it's stable. There's not a big increase that we're seeing. We're just hearing a lot of, I want to say it's more than rumor. We're hearing discussion of some interest in our airport in terms of corporate space. We just don't understand what that relationship could be. So in terms of trying to project fees, it's just very difficult at the corporate level. And that's where most of those come from. All the single engine aircraft, for the most part, you know, are managed by the owners of the aircraft.
So I probably have a really dumb question, but when you extended that runway, how did you let everybody know about it? I mean, how did you get the word out?
Well, we put what's called note them out to the aircraft world. That lets them know this is happening in Delaware. And physically, when the airport is closed, the runway is closed, there's literally a big giant X that shows up on the runway. So if you have no radio communication, didn't check your NOTAMs, you'll still, as you fly there, see this runway is closed. So it was closed for a period of time for some of the operations, but we tried to maintain it open as much as possible.
Okay.
But there's processes for all that. It's really strictly controlled through FAA.
Okay. Sorry, George.
No, I was done.
And so, Bill, when we have this business plan, can maybe one of the things that we ask this consultant be George's idea of this joint ownership thing?
Yes.
Maybe if I have some maybe experience other places where that's been done.
Made notes of that. I'll make sure concept in the RFP. Good notes. Anything else airport related before I talk about building maintenance facilities?
How the only thing being on the airport commission? No? Okay.
All right, I will talk quick about building maintenance. Council did support some changes in staffing over the past few years, primarily changing a part-time to a full-time. With 2 full-time folks there now, we've really, I want to say, caught up on our ability to service on-demand response to any number of issues, whether it's HVAC units or plumbing issues or ripped carpet issues. We're down to it really pretty quickly. And on all the projects that require several days in contractor work, able to keep those driving forward. So we do appreciate the support. I'll say our supervisor too now is a top-notch guy, is able to be very responsive to the planning side.
When you switch,
Sure.
can you tell us what page you're on? So we're paying attention
Yeah.
to you and not this.
I can't because I don't have what you have.
Probably 24.
24?
Building
Yeah,
maintenance.
mine, they don't print out with page numbers on them. They're
Okay.
digital.
Well, then give us a minute to find it, okay?
I sure
Okay,
will.
go ahead, I'm sorry.
Elaine,
Roll
maybe
your
you.
wood, but I can't hear you. I got it, okay, go.
Okay.
I'm sorry, George.
Never mind.
Here.
Yeah.
George needs a sippy cup.
Well, that-
Oh, that was you?
Oh, thank you,
No, Bill,
Sorry,
we
Bill.
want.
We'll start the timer.
No.
Oh, no.
The Columbus Reservoir is moving north. That stuff happens to me.
Oh, no.
Have the tick paper.
No more.
It's in plastic.
Is it on your?
No, I'm good. I got that. That wheel
Better watch.
That's right.
Easy. Have a counselor.
Okay.
Didn't expect that.
Thank you, Elaine.
Okay.
Brief intermission there.
Yes.
All right, is everyone found the appropriate spot for building maintenance as well in the budget?
That's
Okay.
You have 90 seconds.
Yes. And I was just talking about our staff issues for building maintenance. I just want to talk briefly about a couple of things we're looking at. The first is, again, condition of some of the aging HVAC systems. Justice Center is the next one we've looked at. It's got some of the software operating system is coming up on 25 years old, no longer very well supported. We weren't able to keep it in the CIP in terms of, we're estimating about $150,000 cost to replace that. So right now we work on putting in patches, working with our IT to put in patches to change security levels so we can continue to operate the system. But it's something where it's be recurring to keep coming back to be able to fund that system, because just like your furnace at home, they don't last forever, and these HVAC systems don't last forever. But we have identified that as a significant issue. Building security is one we're hearing more about. Our first phase changes here at City Hall will happen in the next couple of weeks, limiting public access to the south side of the building as a phase one. Another phase of that project, again, not funded in this budget currently, but we'll be making more physical changes within the building to maintain public access in the south stairwell and then staff access in the north stairwell. So there'll be free flow of staff or people with access to the building through cards up and down either stairwell, but the public access will be in the south stairwell. And that's, unfortunately, it's a sign of the times, but we do need to do that to control what happens in the building, to be aware of it, and to protect our staff. The same type of changes, we'll be looking at other facilities in town through 2018 to see if there's just some good practices and protocols. For example, fire station doors should be locked all the way around except the front office, and that's the same true of the public works facility or any other facilities. Where do you want to maintain access so you know when someone enters that building and you can maintain control of that situation? So we'll be finishing that work up through 2018 to at least identify maybe additional improvements that need to be made and provide those through council consideration, largely through the CIP process. The Gazette building, engineering building, you're very in-depth and involved in that. We continue to maintain the HVAC, electric, and plumbing utilities in the building to minimum standards to keep them operating and safe. Both require just mounting maintenance on the outside that we've been kind of kicking that can down the road as we consider what we do with these buildings. It's going to get to the point we're going to have to carve out some funds to be able to take care of some of the maintenance. Just for example, just to paint the outside now, the engineering building could start at $20,000 on the front side and the facade, plus the woodwork that needs to happen if we're to upgrade that. And it'll only go up from there. So those are issues that we're watching and monitoring, trying to keep the building secure, trying to keep it really rodent and bird free, keep the holes plugged. But there's some decisions that have to be made, and you're all aware of those as we move forward. The last really issue of facility is custodial services. We'll be changing our vendor this winter in January, but it's getting more and more difficult to get outside vendors to provide these services in the public facility, largely because our approval, background check approval process has certain requirements of all individuals in the public buildings, and it's getting increasingly difficult to identify individuals at the pay level that typically you're getting through custodial services, that they can pass our background checks and be allowed in all of our buildings, specifically courts and the police buildings. But as much as just even, they have access in the city manager's office. And there's contracts and documents and personnel records around. So we may have to consider looking at in-house operations at some point as we go down the road so we can keep better control of that. And that's what I have for facilities.
Question for you, Bill.
Yes.
With your building maintenance, your customer service requests are up almost 75%. Is that an indication that the facilities are getting worse?
Not necessarily means we're able to respond and do a lot more with that. With 2 full-time staff, we predicted people are going to understand if you ask now, something will happen. So more people are asking for more things. We're able to, anything from, a heating problem down to, can you help with some furniture relocation? And so we're getting more of those type of lighter requests that we can still provide assistance
So
to.
it's more of a lighter request?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Great.
Next, I'd like to talk about, nothing more questions on that, is on the fleet or garage rotary. And I'll give you just a minute to find that.
Thanks.
Garage rotary, you
It's
said?
fleet maintenance under the programmatic. It's called garage rotary underneath the line item.
63 line.
What page, Jackie?
I think it's 63 if it's garage rotary.
57.
63 is parts.
63 under line item.
Oh, okay.
And the amount of one is in the.
57.
Okay,
So that's,
Okay.
got it.
All right, again, a couple, just our staffing is solid with our fleet right now, and the improvements made in our fleet garage, very well received in terms of safety, ventilation, employee safety, appreciated. Some of the things we are looking at as our technology and our vehicles continue to change, become far more advanced, the need to keep our employees trained, particularly not just in, for example, transmissions, but in CPU operations and management. There's more and more computer systems. In the fire department apparatus now, there's miles and miles and miles of electronic lines on these to operate them. So we have to have specific training for that. And that's probably one of the highlights in terms of what we do like to do, is make sure we're very well trained. I know we have been discussing bringing on either an EV or LP EV type vehicle into our fleet. We need to train on those things too. It's a different type of system, and we want to make sure we can fully take care of those vehicles, even though if we buy something, it should be some form of warranty for a while, but eventually it will fall upon our fleet mechanics to take care of that. So it's more training to do. And then we're continuing to work towards all departments, but in fleet especially, transition of all of our service records into a digital management format, so we can keep track of these things longer, not be taking time writing it on paper, but also interface with the devices we plug into the vehicles to help us diagnose issues. We can take that information and store it digitally with the records. It's where everyone is going at digital management, and we are working across several departments on trying to improve our digital management, records management systems. Last thing I just wanted to address is the question I think, Kent, you had regarding pricing, the garage rotary pricing. That's exactly how we do it. I just happen to have the sheet right here. We keep track every year of the department's needs, and then we take 3-year average, the most current 3-year average. And exactly as Ted said, sometimes the equipment in that particular division gets old and it's more labor intensive, or sometimes they buy something new that has some significant labor requirements to it, or operational requirements that we have to put money into. So we're only asking for the average of 3 years. And as Dean pointed out, we're very close in terms of control and doing a good job at it, but it does fluctuate a little bit depending upon the makeup of that fleet and age of the fleet. In a very similar manner, the fuel use for each department that in their fuel budget is determined the exact same way. Look at the 3-year average and determine the fuel. And then on top of that, we look at the trends of where fuel use and expenses are going And we try to, best we can, make some kind of determination as to what the fuel cost average is going to be next year for both off-road, on-road diesel and regular fuel, and make those adjustments accordingly. We're pretty good. I mean, I'd say we're about 90%, 95% accurate, and most departments get through the year with those estimates. Sometimes we have to do some fund transfers or supplementals in the fuel accounts if there's something that changes. Anything, any questions regarding where we are at fleet?
Your number 3 goal or pilot a GPS tracking system, have we done anything with that?
We actually had the answer is no, we don't have any results. Yes, we did. We were putting it on our snow equipment. And the past 2 years, we weren't able to use our snow equipment. So the company actually asked for, yeah. But unfortunately, they're not understanding they want their equipment back. So we'll probably look for a different vendor. There's a lot of vendors out there to pilot GPS tracking equipment. They just weren't very understanding that it didn't snow in Central Ohio. That's fine with us, like you said. We're hoping it'll be the same this year. Anything else with fleet? I'll go to solid then.
Solid waste is on 54 and the pragmatic. And
it's refuse called refuse in the line item.
What's that line item, roughly?
58, okay. Again, very stable division. We're meeting or exceeding expectations. We get a lot of good public feedback. We continue to for refuse operation. So there's no staffing additions, but we will be looking at what we call balancing our routes this year, as especially with the southeast side of the city continues to expand so rapidly. We have to redraw the boundaries of our 5-route system, which means some people are going to have a collection day change. And there's a process to notify them, plus a process to give them some forgiveness over a few-week period to make sure everyone gets the refuse collected all the time. But we can expect that in 2018. We're also looking at fully operated tip cart equipment. We've been purchasing manual tip cart collection equipment since we initiated tip carts a while ago. And more and more the industry now is looking at fully automated, where the driver sits in the vehicle and is able to grab the tip carts, empty them, and place them back on the street. It's a different type of equipment. We're looking at the cost of it. If we do believe that there's a benefit to it, adding that to the fleet, it would be phased over time as we replace out the collection equipment. But it could help further improve the efficiency of the operation, as well as help reduce on-job injuries. Every stop there is, the drivers have to step down a couple steps, sometimes on the curb, off the curb, twist, turn, and get back in. We get back injuries, arm injuries, and ankle and knee injuries from our most prevalent during that. So if we can keep a driver in the vehicle and perform the same operation quicker, it may be positive. So, but we'll do some ROI on that to determine what might be a good fit for Delaware. Bulk item collection, twice a month, very successful, very good feedback from our residents on that. We continue to call it a pilot phase. I think we committed to a year pilot, which will be sometime in May or June we'll finish. But so far, very, very productive, and we found that has very little impact in terms of operation or demand on existing staff. Recycling, we're keeping our eye on right now. There's some real issues right now with the diminishing demand for recycled material. And we've talked with our MRF operator, Sims, up in Marion, and they may be charged us for some of the transport costs to take our recyclables there, which will result in some changes to our fee structure. So we're watching that, and that's just a function of the market. It's difficult to get rid of recyclable materials right now. So we'll keep posted on that. It's not a local, regional, it's a national issue. And there's just not the high demand for recyclables as we may wish there could be.
Is that across all items?
Metals is probably still the strongest in terms of desire for metals, because there's more market for creating less expensive metal items. But plastics is difficult. It's energy intensive to change plastics back into a usable material. And there's very, very little market really for fiber right now. It's very limited to blow-on insulation and things like that. And if every newspaper that's read in the country is being recycled. There's just not enough market to capture all that. So some of this material gets stockpiled, some of it gets landfilled eventually. So that's some of the difficulties in maintaining recycling program. It's very important for there to be an end product user in this stream to make it worthwhile in terms of just pure economics. We do spend over $600,000 a year to do a recycling program. We don't get anything for that, other than that we're meeting a mandate through the state that we recycle at least 25% of our overall yard output in our district. And Delaware certainly contributes heavily to that because we have so many people recycling in our community. Over 40% of our residents recycle right now.
You're extending the life of the landfill capacity.
Yeah, there's a lot of tangent benefits to recycling, but when it just comes down to doing an operation, what does it cost? You know, there's cost to it, and our cost reflects back to our user rates, and we will again look at our rates just as every year. Instead of, again, I think the comment made, we should be looking at rates every year. We'll look at them every year. What we do with that information is up to council ultimately. But we're going to take a look at our rates again to see, based on our new operations budget and these issues, is there any adjustment needed in the rates or not? And be able to contrast that against what the private sector is offering.
So we need to have Sean find a company that can take care of all this and
Move them here.
yeah, move them here.
About 200 employees.
And we will give them all the recycling.
Well, what I will say, what makes our overall refuse collection program very competitive is the fact we have a MRFin in Marion that takes all of our materials, and we have 2 yard waste recyclers right here on either side of the city that allows us to do what we do as economically as we do. In fact, in that case, our leaf collection is probably more efficient than most communities, even that some that do still vacuum them. They have a real issue what to do with all that material. We don't have any issue with it. We can quickly take it to the east side or west side. Downtown refuse collection still remains an issue. We piloted 2 years ago and then again renewed contracts, what we call publicly accessible dumpsters on the south block of Sandusky Street has worked very well. Almost all the issues that were routinely happening every couple of weeks seem to be resolved, but now it looks like the north block of Sandusky on the west side is having the same type of issues where property owners, businesses don't necessarily get along and don't want to be in each other's dumpsters. So we may be looking at the placement of additional publicly accessible dumpsters on the north block. Unfortunately, on the north side, work with Dave and through Sean trying to identify a private property owner willing to provide the space has not been fruitful. We may be looking at having to use our public space to put these dumpsters, which could impact parking on that west side. So, and those are the issues we've been fighting with is.
Are these retail places?
I'm sorry.
Are they retail businesses that are fighting? Do they realize they're going to lose a parking spot? A potential client to come to their business?
I think Sean has worked fairly well and Dave with trying to express the issue. Yep. What it comes down to is, you know, parking is a huge issue for us. At least we've been spending a lot of time on it. But sanitation is almost a necessity to provide sanitation. So the alternate in sanitation is to allow them to use the sidewalks for daily pickup, to put refuse bags, including from restaurants, on the sidewalk. And I think we know what the outcome of that will be too. So it's a difficult issue that we're going to have to resolve. There is some cost to doing the publicly accessible dumpsters, but it's an issue we're going to have to work through in 2018. And even earlier, depending upon what happens with these couple businesses that are really been pressing us hard for a solution to this. So we're not going to make a decision on that today, obviously, but wanted to be very aware of how difficult this situation is. And that is, I guess last I want to mention is our leaf collection is as strong as ever this year. Our leaf collection happens to be, we provide a weekly pickup and sometimes more than once a week, depending upon if the guys are getting ahead. And all we ask is that the residents put them in a brown bag and we'll pick all the leaves you can possibly give to us, plus other yard waste once a week at your property, which is as strong or stronger than most communities can provide.
And when does that end?
Right now it's technically the 15th is what we told the public, which we think most of the leaves are going to be able to be down by then. But if it turns out that we need to extend it a week, we will.
Just spend a minute or two talking about the LEAF programs and some of the other communities in Central Ohio have where they actually pick up? the
Sure.
leaves? Because a lot of that came up in the different threads you saw during the flooding. Because why isn't the city
Right.
vacuum the leaves? And I think we had that program
Right.
back in the 80s, I think.
Yep.
And you looked into it a little because
Yeah.
anticipating that.
Yeah, many communities still maintain, we all maintain some form of leaf collection. Delaware happens to be, you rake it, we take it. Other communities are just get it to the curb and we'll vacuum it up. So those are the ones we focused on because people think that's takes one step away from them bagging them. They can just rake them to one spot. That's a typical model. I looked at Upper Arlington's model. They are probably best known for providing the vacuum service. They use their public works crew for 5 to 6 weeks. They dedicate 8 men all day with 5 vehicles, each one with about a $60,000 piece of equipment on it, to be able just to pick the leaves up, vacuum them up. And they'll go through they'll sweep the city 5 times or 6 times in that 6-week period. And that's it. But in that time, it takes 100% of their public works group's time, 18 men and women, to be able to perform that activity. So that's the trade-off. So that you see the cost is the manpower and the loss in what else can be on pavement, other repairs, things like that, while you're doing leaf collection with what I would call 100% automated system. Other models provide different variations of that one-time collection. They'll pick a day, or we can go down, and if your leaves happen to fall by then, great. If they fall after that, sorry, you still got to bag them and take them out yourself. So there's a variety. Leaf collection universally across most municipalities is very important to residents in Central Ohio, and we all have various ways to deal with it. Ours happens to be weekly and requires a little bit of work from the property owner's point of view, but we have no limits to take.
May I ask a question about that? Because I know that for a property, the property owner is responsible for the leaves, obviously, that are on their property. But who's picking up the leaves that fall in the street? Because half of them are falling on people's property, and then half of them are falling in the street. And so if I'm bagging the leaves in my front yard, it's not taken care of.
We ask that the residents be responsible for the leaves in the gutter that abuts their property, and some are good about that, others it's ongoing. I mean, I know my neighborhood, you break them one day, the next day they're got them again. That's really part of the issue that we saw with the flooding, was that those leaves end up on top of basin grates, and that was the reason we had a lot of the backup. But
And Lee's been good about reaching out to the community through Nextdoor, through our Facebook, and trying to remind them that, hey, please pick these things up out of the road too, because it does impact. There's no one else to do that. I know in my neighborhood, it's hit and miss. More people go out there and do clean them up, but there's always a few that don't. I've seen some neighbors just go and pick up more than just what's in front of their property because of that issue, recognizing the potential impact of leaving the leaves there. We talked internally about, do we get more aggressive with reminding folks by physically handing out notices to those residents and saying, you need to clean these up in front of your property. We haven't decided to do that yet because there's always some negative outcome from those things too. But yeah, it's every year we have some issue with storm. It just the perfect storm of events 2 weeks ago. We had an unpredictable 5-inch rainfall plus leaves. Was a very difficult thing. We couldn't have predicted that, and we still reacted fairly well from it. But in general, even if you have a full leaf collection program that's automated, it's not going to pick the leaves up scattered across the road. Only the residents being responsible can really get that policed effectively.
What if you do something in the utility bill that said, in the fall, this is when we're going to pick up leaves, this is your responsibility, and just reminder about the street then?
I thought we had something in there. I can't.
Yeah, we have.
Yeah. So we spend a lot of time trying to let people know their responsibility.
I was thinking not just on the bill, but an additional piece of paper. Is there an additional one in there, or is it just what's on the bill?
it's in the bill.
Yeah.
I mean, it's on the.
It's a little memo thing.
Yeah.
We put it in the newsletter too, I think, right, Lee?
Yeah, so we'll continue to find new ways, especially through social media, to remind folks.
Does it seem just a little crazy though to anyone that now residents, we put the trees in, which I get and I'm in favor of. And then they drop all the leaves and you have to pick them up on your own property. But now we're asking people to clean up the street too. It just seems.
Well, that's where you get into this question of should the city offer that as a service, and that's.
We don't. My question, Bill, do you have a sense, or could you, how hard would it be to say if we were going to do the leaf pickup, automated vacuum pickup twice a year, what that would cost?
Yeah, I think the most practical way would be to look at a contract cost and to provide that service, because obviously our staff is set up to do the services we do offer. So we could look at a contract cost to bring in contract leaf collection, sweepers in the road, and to pick all those up. I can tell you that our normal contract street sweeper is $25,000 for a single sweep of the city without leaves. They don't want, the equipment they bring in doesn't pick up leaves. It picks up the dirt and grits in the gutter. If we did it as a leaf collection, I can certainly try to provide some numbers, and I can't tell you if that's going to be a $100,000 number or a $400,000 number to provide that service, but it's information I think we could provide back.
Yeah, it'd be an interesting discussion to have. Yeah, I don't see the leaf pickup in the street as being any different than your requirement to clean your sidewalk when it snows, you know? But I think it may, depending on cost, it may be reasonable for us to do it twice a year. Leaf vacuum, it's reasonable.
Well, we did eliminate the fall sweep.
Right.
We do the spring sweep,
Right.
we eliminate the fall sweep, so, and we were spending money, that was storm sewer paid for through the storm sewer fund as much as it, you're trying to keep the gutters clean, so.
Right, but to clarify, their fall sweep wasn't a leaf collection program, it was clean the gutters. Leaf collection really requires, I'm gonna say 6 to 8 week continuous effort from when the leaves start to fall to when they're really done falling, and to be out there weekly to keep those things cleaned up. That would be a leaf collection program that pretty much mimics what we do now and what other communities do. So that's the comparable that we can bring back.
Well, I'm not saying that we do it to eliminate the leaf bags. I mean,
Right.
I'm just saying
Right.
if we did a twice a year sweep in addition to the leaf bags to get these things out in the gutter so we don't have flooding problems, and for those people who don't pick them up and whatever. I don't know that I want to see us do that instead of.
Right. One of the issues I think we would see is if we said we're going to start picking up the leaves that aren't in your tree lawn, they're in the road, we're going to see people sweeping like they do now, pushing the leaves into the road, knowing that our leaf collection will be coming through. So we want to look at that carefully, but there would be a definite outcome to that.
Well, I guess that's right. I don't have a problem with that. If we tell people we're going to pick up leaves in the street this day and this day, and they can do like they do in other communities and rake them into the street and pick them up. I mean, for me, if they're in my yard in the meantime, I'm still going to rake them up and put them in something else. But I guess I'd just like to know, without trying to go through the program, what it would cost if you did a couple of sweeps.
Sure.
Well, and I think really though, at the end of the day, and I think you have to, I think to solve the problem, because the problem is the storm sewers are getting clogged with leaves. And if we can we just have a program, an extension, through our storm sewers that says, we're going to go out and I know we do this already as part of your ongoing maintenance, you guys go out there and clean out, those storm sewer grates and probably on a reactionary basis.
Right.
But, to do that more on a proactive basis in the fall, but not this, because if we said we're picking up leaves in the street, that would be a bad thing, in my opinion, because people would just rake all the leaves. And then 1,000-hour project becomes a 4,000-hour project because people are just raking all their leaves into the street. But if we could just point that just to going around and using a Vector type piece of equipment and just clean out those storm sewers annually, whether that's in the fall, whether that's whenever. Because I know just down from my house, I just cleaned off a couple grates. They've been caked with leaves for 2 years. Just less than a quarter mile away. I mean, I walk my dog every day, and they have never been cleaned, and they just sit there. And, obviously, the property owners not doing it. But if we just do something from a storm sewer perspective.
And that's one of the follow-ups to the discussion of the after-action that John Donahue is leading up after-action analysis of how we did with the flood
And how are the things that utilities can do in advance of that, which gets to your point, which is a little different than what you're asking.
I'd still
for,
like to know
Ken.
what it would cost.
Yeah, we can provide
Twice
that.
a year.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we used to have that truck or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and it got too costly to repair it. That's the way we used
Right,
to.
so I think contract services might be more,
Right.
at this point in time, we don't have the truck, we don't have the manpower, but just
Right.
what it costs.
Well, we can-
50,000, we don't want to do it. If it's 400, probably not.
Right. We'll bring something back.
Lisa, did you get a lot of feedback from your HOA and residents about that in
Not,
particular?
I didn't get any feedback, but just seemed like people don't know that they need to be doing that because the city used to do it, now we don't anymore, or
Okay.
Okay, yep.
Right.
Next, how about if we talk about traffic and engineering changes there? Engineering, I guess, first, Jackie?
page 22. minor.
Okay.
35 in the back. 35 in the back. 22 in the front.
The most significant budget change with engineering is going to be what's in there is the proposed, the restoration of a full-time construction inspector, a second inspector. At one time, we had more than two inspectors, but we're asking to restore one that was discussed previously with the group for reasons, but and you listen to Dave's metrics there, we are struggling in the field daily trying to cover all the bases, and we can't frankly cover all the bases, and we can't manage the amount of contract staff that we have to hire adequately. And you can only get the highest quality and average quality and lower quality the more people you bring on. So it's more important to manage that staff correctly. So we want to bring on the second position again, bring it back. And largely the cost of this position would be funded through the engineering fees. Their hours associated with the project would be reimbursable through it. Having the second inspector would help offset our need for contract labor, especially through the winter months, when we still need contract folks now, maybe one or two in town, to cover the projects that build through the winter. With our staff increase, we could probably let those contract folks go and just manage that work in-house. So they still would have utility and reimbursability through the wintertime as well. But the most important part of this is the fact that our level of service over managing the multitude of construction activities out now from the northwest side of town to the southeast side of town. We can't, our one guy can't drive from Heatherton down to Glen Ross in under 25 minutes, 30 minutes, spending an enormous amount of downtime just traveling around. So having the second person to split the city up somewhat and manage is really going to be beneficial. So that's probably the biggest change right there. I wanted to report that we did restore a second plan review with last year's budget, and the dividends have really paid off. We've got a highly qualified two folks, matter of fact, with transition. One you've met, Jonathan, and Carrie will bring in here for you to meet in the next few meetings, have met a lot of the BIA goals and concerns in terms of plan turnaround time, accuracy in that, working with Dave's crew in terms of coordination between the departments. So we've met all those target goals right there. And as well as bringing in some fresh young minds looking at our land development process and bringing, in fact, some new ideas, how to make that process even better. So it's been very, very successful. I think Tom mentioned earlier, we will look in 18 at evaluation of our fee structure when it comes to land development to make sure it's fair, to make sure it's accountable, that it measures percentage-wise with where material costs have gone versus labor costs, make sure our formulas still work. Also that we can provide or consider an end of project reconciliation with the projects that, and some may end up owing us more money at the end, and on some we may say we owe them back $8,000. We didn't use everything they paid. So all very feasible. We'll work with IT, with finance in terms of a mechanism to record the data and look at the data. It's all the kind of things we know already, but it's actually collecting this data and looking at it and being a little more accountable with the fees. I do think our fee structure is solid. I don't think we're overcharging right now, but I can't tell you in any one project the exact amount of effort put into it, and we will be able to do that.
So the reconciliation thing, we are going to start doing that.
I think as a goal, I think we want to look at being able to do that, and I don't see any reason why if we can do it, we wouldn't do that. There's some process involved in terms of of identifying how to write checks back to people if we owe them money, because those aren't the kind of things we say we're going to owe someone $15,000. We haven't appropriated that money necessarily. So I'll work with Dean in terms of how mechanically to do that, but there's no reason why I think philosophically we shouldn't be doing that. We did have under engineering, we did have a reclassification. We were not able to get approved in this budget, and that was really our traffic engineer who has brought our traffic division to the highest level it's ever been in terms of accuracy, bringing grant money in, and we hope that we'll be able to bring that back next year, and maybe things will look a little more favorable, that person's authority, responsibility, and their performance will be able to acknowledge that and get that person to the higher engineering category. The online digital plan review is a 2018. It was a 17 goal, but it's expanded and overall with IT and the need to look at storage operations. We will look at for sure piloting online-based, cloud-based plan reviews in 18. That will help bring some efficiency. More than anything, again, it'll open up accountability to the clients out there so that the client engineers and the clients can see the process from a portal from the outside instead of having to call in and say, where's my project? There should be some efficiencies internally too. And we'll work really close with Dave's crew, again, in whatever we do, making sure it's coordinated across the city in that effort. Is there any questions on the engineering side? I want to go to the traffic side next, Jackie. I'm going to finish up traffic and street maintenance.
Street maintenance. Do you want to do street maintenance?
I'll do traffic and then street maintenance. SMR traffic.
31?
Yeah, 39.
31 for
What's
traffic.
on the streets, okay.
Okay. A traffic operation, again, very solid largely through Jessica Umeroyd. I know some of you know her. She's done a great job over the past 3 years with that division. We weren't unable to add some seasonal hours. We looked to add another 1,000 hours. Really, those seasonal hours go almost primarily to our what we call a short line striping program, which is repainting our sidewalks and our stop bars, those white symbols every year across the city, with a heavy focus on around the schools, high traffic areas downtown. We're able to do a lot of the city on an annual basis right now, but we still can't get to the entire city with the time we have, largely because there's more time that we could do type of work, but we have to let our seasonals go at a certain point, and because we run out of hours. So the request was to increase the hours in order to run that painting program a little bit longer. We have 2 full crews, 2 equipment to do it, but not the hours.
I think that's a necessity. When you're talking the safety of our children, our pedestrians,
Who are we talking for?
$12,000.
That was the estimate.
That's on
for
this sheet that she gave us. I don't know how the rest of you feel, but I think safety is up there at the top.
We did have a increase in our operation funds that is included in the budget. A lot of that will go towards the signal system, and again, the signal system, like vehicles, the technology is changing so quick. Anything to do with CPU, and right now, it was a very short time ago we had individual independent signals in town. Now they're interconnected, they're coordinated. They have camera detection, radar detection sensors. They have real-time traffic management and phasing adjustments. And we are spending significant input through the state's program to upgrade the overall system. But the maintenance of these components are really important. Battery backup is one of the big priorities here that Jessica's identified, to get more of these on battery backup. And just 2 weeks ago, again, with the power outage, one of the first things staff did was back out there again right away and look at what signals were impacted, so we could make sure the battery backup's working or get quickly identified locations. Battery backups provide the whole community a much higher level of safety in these power outage situations to keep the signals operating appropriately. So a lot of that increase in operating funds goes really towards the signal system and keeping the signal system operating appropriately.
Bill, I know I've asked you this before, but I can't remember. Where are we at with the WARPC funding for the revamping of our signals, and what's our timetable?
Yeah, we are in the process right now of finalizing the agreement, the LPA agreement. It's a very similar process to the point, only we had to offset which one was the priority. So we are working right now on the LPA agreements for the signal system. So we can go ahead. We have a consultant on board, and once we get the agreements for you and approved and the contract signed, we can go ahead and start that. So we're predicting end of first quarter we'll be underway also with that work on the signal system.
What's our timetable for completion?
It's fairly short. It's like a year in order to get the analysis done and actually start implementing improvements. It's very different from the point project. We'll have very immediate, it's more of a identification, counting, and programming type. And there are some physical improvements to do with them, but they're not intensive like rebuilding a bridge. So we'll see very quick turnaround on this.
So, but just as a clarification on that. So the actual to actually go out and see the improvement, though, we're still looking at 19.
That's I guess what I want to know. When we're going to see the improvement.
Yeah.
We should be seeing the first phases of improvement towards the second half of 19, I would say. And I'll provide you a more specific schedule once we get through the LPA process like we did with the point, and we'll lay it right out in terms of the different steps and when the physical construction activities will start, and bring that back to you.
To me, it's still just a huge piece of our congestion issues to get these signals back where we were up, where we really wanted to be.
Yes. I appreciate the comments on the hours. There may be some ability to readjust some of the funding between the operations and the staffing. So our net is still the
That's just
same.
my opinion. I don't know about everybody else.
Yeah, we can.
It is a growing concern. I'll say Tom has been very supportive in terms of pointing out the need to keep these white lines, what we call short white lines, a high priority. And I agree with that. So maybe there's some, we can talk offline and see if there's a way we can accommodate that with some reductions and some increases. What the other big change in traffic, and this is another one that was approved through professional services, in partnering with utilities, the ability to bring on a utility locate service. Right now we're spending one technician, 50% of their time daily is just locating call-ins, whether it's Columbia Gas or WOW or Verizon. We have to go out and locate all of our electric lines and our related traffic lines, our street light power lines. So 3/4 of that cost will be through utility, a fourth will be through traffic, but they'll bring in a private consultant to do that fairly repetitive operation on a daily basis. And there'll be days we could have 20 or 30 or more locates out there, and we're taking people who are specialized and trained to work on signals and having them located where the line is for the street light in the corner. Not the best use of our time, and the cost, the return will provide us a lot more time to do those more technological important issues. So we'll keep you abreast on that, but I think we should have a utility company, hopefully in the first quarter, nailed down and on board. Last is street maintenance. Jackie?
Do you want administration or?
No, just the street maintenance, I think.
29.
Yeah. 29?
Yeah.
Okay, with street maintenance, again, we did ask for additional technicians, and we're not able to this operating budget for all the reasons that we've discussed. Yes, I sound like a broken record when we talk. I think we all know the issues with our streets, but I wouldn't probably be doing my job if I didn't, at least every challenge I get, inform you of where we are. So why do we need additional street technicians? Well, one, we haven't increased our staff and street technicians commensurate at all with the growth of the city. We all know how much the city has grown, the amount of miles of road we're adding to take care of. Fortunately, new roads come in, and we don't have a whole lot of effort to do with them, to work on them, but we do have streetlights to keep operating, storm sewers to look to repair, traffic signs, pavement markings to take care of annually, all take time. But more importantly, we know this pavement within 5 years requires maintenance, crack seal maintenance, slurry seal maintenance, and eventually paving. And without being able to increase the size of our local operations, these things fall behind, and we just can't hire contract work to do more crack sealing because we don't have the funds for that either. So we did ask for that just so we can make sure that we demonstrate the need there. We also asked for increase in operating funds as well to buy things like crack seal material, asphalt material, and again are unable to meet those needs right now. So again, we know we're adding miles of roadway every year, and the pavement continues to deteriorate. So again, we don't have the funding. So I know we talked earlier about skies not falling necessarily in the world of big picture of economic development, but certainly with our roads, it's fallen. And if for fact, if all we do is resurface a local road once every 25 years, I should be paving 3 miles of road per year. It costs me right now $250,000 to pave 1 mile of road. So I should be having a minimum $750,000 for just our local streets per year. Our budget now, and you've seen the CIP, is limited to $150,000 per year over the next 5 years. So there's a real issue we're all very aware of. We made an attempt a year ago to try to bring that to the public. And from my perspective as director, I just want to keep it fresh in everyone's minds that that issue is really there, and both internally with staff, with funding, and externally, we need to keep this fresh in our minds is how significant this issue really is. And I wanted to just contrast too that it's the large projects we are working on, the East William Street projects, the Point projects. We're going to be talking about East Central Avenue. Those, yes, one school thought to say, if we didn't do those, you'd have money, but that's just not true. The monies we're getting largely for those projects are federal dollars and state dollars. And they're also the type of projects that you have to deal with the large scale congestion issues. At the same time, you have to deal with your maintenance issues. It's no different than our parks levy, where we could have just asked for a small amount of money to take care of what we had, but we asked for enough to take care of what we had and to expand our park system. And our roads are the same way. We need funding to take care of what we have, and we need money to expand or take care of these larger scale congestion issues. And we've done pretty well on these major efforts and bringing in significant dollars. But on the day-to-day maintenance, to fix it first, both internal staff and just funding is just a real issue that really faces us every year this time, both in the CIP time and the budget process. So I don't need to say any more about that because I think we're aware enough about that. I will say our snow and ice management we've really been able to improve that. And if we get some snow this year, we'll be fully prepared. Our salt barn is full. Jumping onto the state's bidding system has been great. We've been realizing better pricing for salt. This year, I'm working with the county to jump on their material purchasing for construction, stone, asphalt, to reap the benefits of larger quantity and lower pricing with them as well, and getting away from having to do small individual contracts that we do. So we're moving in every possible direction to try to save money as we can. But none of that's going to be significant enough to offset the need for the overall funding of roadway maintenance.
So since we didn't have a whole lot of snow last year, thank you, Lord,
it still looks like we've spent a lot of money then. That's what I'm trying to figure out, 132,000.
Right. We had to replenish the salt that we didn't use all of our salt, but we replenished the salt that we did purchase.
It just seems like we should have some extra money there since we didn't.
Ultimately, we'll end up with a balance. If we don't spend all the money salt, there will be a balance in the salt fund in the end of the year.
Okay.
We only spend, what we do is we will replenish in January, February. We'll look at what we think our end of the season balance will be. Then in the contract with ODOT, we'll ask for, in this case, we asked for up to 2,200 tons. We can hold 3,200 tons. We used about 1,800 or 1,900 tons last year. Even though we had no significant snowfalls, we had a bunch of 1 and 2 inch events, and every one of them requires the same initial treatment as a 6-inch snowfall.
Thank you.
So from our perspective, it'd be better to get one 15-inch snowstorm than 7 2-inch snowstorms because we spend a lot less money.
Right.
But that's how it operates. So we still do use salt just on the light events as well. But any money, it's a separate account, and money we don't spend on that will go back into the fund, general fund, end of the year.
Bill, has the salt cost per ton stabilized?
Yes.
Has it come down?
It's come down. Yeah, we've reached a high of between $75 and $80 a ton. We're down to the mid 40s right now again. So the industry itself had that huge ramp up with those 2 really bad years in the Midwest and New England, and have created really just now have a huge extra supply of salt.
So now, just out of curiosity, prior to those events, those couple years, weren't we paying in the 20s or something?
I don't think we paid that low for a long time. We've been in that mid-range of $35, $45 a ton for a while. It's when you have, again, these, just like any other industry, they produce for the averages, a little better than the averages, but no one can predict that you're going to have 40 inches or 50 inches of snow across so much of the New England area and the Midwest area. They just didn't have the production available, and supply and demand just drove the cost up so high. And now it's come down to what I think is probably that average, what the rate it should be.
I can remember years when you paid like 112 a ton. It was just crazy.
Yeah, not in my tenure at least, but it's
At
just.
that time, I don't think we were piggybacking with the county either, though. So that made a difference.
The use, I will say too, the use of our brining has reduced our overall salt dependency as well. We do brine with salt, but at about 20% the amount of salt to do brining, and it's far more effective initial treatment. So we again appreciate the support over the past several years in making, fully equipping us to do that. That's all I have for the street division, and any other questions. I know it's 8 budgets to go through. It's a lengthy process. I really tried, Chris, to keep it to 10 minutes, but it just wasn't going to be there. But that's an overview of what I think we can accomplish this year with the funding that's in the budget and with some tweaks we can look at.
I just have one other question back when we talk about refuge. Do you have any sense yet as to how the opt-out thing that we passed back in May is going to affect?
We've had, I want to say 5 or 6 total. And the first 3 we knew were going to come right away. But we've also had several come back into the system as well that are no longer satisfied with the private pricing and have wanted to ask to come back in. So the fear of we're going to lose of 130 customers, 100 of them isn't there. And as a matter of fact, the equipment we're looking at least investigating to do the fully automated is primarily a front load piece of equipment as opposed to a rear load. So it may provide some flexibility on the commercial side to pick up more customers that have front load only. It's the same type of vehicle. So we'll provide more information back maybe through Public Works Committee and on our research there as we go through the year.
Quick question. The looks like at Public Works, we received like 8,000 phone calls last year, and only 5,000, customer service requests were issued. What's the difference?
Not every phone call needs a customer service request. Sometimes we can provide the information like, no, you need to call utility or transfer to utility. Or if it's we trash, we just put it on a missed chart, and there's so many of those, we don't bother turn them into a CSR.
Okay, good enough.
I ran into the lady last night that you helped on Pollock Road.
Yes.
And she was so appreciative, all the staff that helped her out with the problem.
Great.
She just went on and on and on and on. So
Well,
thank
great.
you.
Great, because it was a tough issue.
Initially,
She was irate, but you turned her very positive.
We work really hard
So thank you.
out there. Thank you. Good.
Thank you. Okay, Bruce?
Good morning.
Good morning.
If you're ready, Madam Mayor, for 2018, I'll just provide kind of an overview of some of the major acquisitions we hope to make and some of the initiatives we're working on or will work on in 2018 and just be available for questions. In our Patrol Division is obviously our backbone and kind of the biggest function that everything else in the police department supports. And one of the biggest things affecting patrol next year will be, we're looking at replacing our firearms with an updated model and a new caliber. And this is largely a result of a couple things. One, we have carried our current firearms, our current model, since I believe the mid-90s. And since then, just ballistic capabilities and research and practicalities of different calibers has changed. So we are actually going to change caliber and change to a new model that will make us be a little easier to purchase ammunition, hopefully, and also we're going to go to a 9mm. And so the FBI has done some extensive testing there. There's a lot of reasons to do it. The ballistic capabilities from what we carry now to 9 is very similar now, whereas it didn't used to be. So it's all started in the 80s, moving to a larger caliber. Now we're all coming back to 9. So a lot of agencies are doing it, and there's a very good reason to do that. So that's one of the big projects we'll be working on next year, assuming that this budget is approved as is. Investigations will be very much as is. We don't have anything major planned there, other than we are going through a transition of personnel, which is a good thing. We have guys that want to be mobile and move through there. So we have updated some positions within our drug task force and our general division, but that is just a typical cost of doing business, not even a cost, but just a transition of manpower. Community education is probably one of our biggest, newest areas that we're working on. As you know, council approved a new position at the police department in 2017 for our community impact officer. And we realized that position in June of last year, and it's been really successful. One of the things we're doing, we developed that position from the line level up. So we wanted it to be a patrol level position. I know that was one of the concerns of council, is that this is a police officer, not a desk jockey. And so that's kind of what our line officers thought too. We wanted it to have a benefit for our line officers and act as a community impact and kind of force multiplier for that community relations and community interaction piece that we're looking to accomplish. So it's gone really well this year with Officer Sean Franks. But one of the things we did when we developed the position was we want to circle back after 6 months, and we're going to evaluate how things are going and what improvements we can make. So we will continue to do that into next year. So we're transitioning personnel in that area, but we're looking at expanding and improving on what we're doing right now, but it's gone really well. In our support division, there's another couple major expenditures in this area. Support is generally our records and civilian staff, but the big change, or the big project here, will be a CIP approved project, which is updating our records management system. We're on our current system, early 90s, late 80s, early 90s. So upgrading that will be very beneficial for us. The other thing we're doing is we still have to maintain a lot of paper records, and we've been using the same room in our basement since 1991. And we're actually going to upgrade the shelving system in there to make it a lot more user-friendly and safe for our records clerks to be moving boxes around, and also to maximize the space we have in there just with the records we have to maintain for 20, 30 years and forever. So those are the major issues we have and projects we have going on in records and support.
Can you maintain them on scanning, or do you have to keep the paper?
We probably could do that, but there's a lot of records we'd have to scan. So even our reports, with the records management system we have now, we attach hard copies to every. So if I get a written statement, if I get a document, it's attached as a hard copy to a hard copy of the report, and that's how we save it. With our new records management system, that might be automatic. With our new records management system, we may be able to take kind of all these disparate ways of keeping our records, our case records, and keep them all in one place. It makes it easy for us to manage them. It also makes it easy for us to distribute it, especially when we're talking about getting it to the courts, making discovery, making public records requests. So that's a possibility moving forward that will reduce the amount of work we have to put into maintaining paper records, but we still have a significant amount of paper records to store and maintain. If we had to go back and scan all those, that would be another large project unto its own, but it's a possibility if that's something that council would want me to pursue. The last item, just in terms of our functions, is administrative, and we are, we'll maintain the same administrative structure at the police department. One of the initiatives we started this year was to introduce some command staff level training, and this was designed at, some succession planning, some leadership and culture training. So we want to establish, a culture at the police department where we're not just doing things because they need to be done, but we want to have kind of a 30,000-foot approach to things, understand how our reactions to things, how we respond to things fit in with our bigger plan to provide the service that the public wants, the service that council wants, and to do it as a professional police department. So it was really successful this year. We are using Focus 3. They're out of Dublin, but they work with a lot of the sports teams. They work with Ohio State football. And we have an ex-military member assigned to us, and it's been very well received by the command staff. So we're going to continue doing that. And what we're doing with the command staff is then officers seeing a lot of, things we want to do that we want to do them organically, not because someone's ordered to or because it's in a policy, but we want to develop a culture that we do things because we want the best outcome for our public as possible. That is everything in terms of initiatives and major purchases for next year, and I'll be willing to answer any questions.
Question and a comment. First, question is, maybe I didn't, you said it in here, but replacement of the weapons. What do we do with the old weapons?
We will be able to trade them in and get a the word is escaping me, but that's the word. We'll get a credit for those, so it actually reduced. That's why the dollar amount is really relatively low there. We'll get a credit for our current stock and then pay for the remainder.
Just a comment. The numbers with crimes are down. So congratulations and well done.
Thank you. I think, I give a lot of credit, working with DAS and civil service and our hiring process, even that was established when Russ Martin was here, is we're way ahead of the curve on where the governor's task force and the attorney general and the president, we've hit a lot of those things before they were put out there in those reports. So it's really, I couldn't be prouder of, the department and some of the things our guys do just on the line level, because they feel compelled to do them because that's their job and their service. And just the guys, we did a PT test this morning for new officers, and just seeing the quality of the people coming in and who we end up with, I've been really, really satisfied that we're really set up well for years and years to come, just with the quality of the people we have on the road today.
What is that percentage there? Was that, do you know the percentage off the top of your head?
Percentage of?
How much crimes reduced? I'm looking at what these metrics of
it was,
1,176 last year and 696 this year.
If they continue, it's pretty significant.
It is. It's 50%.
And it's Christmas season. Things tend to spike a little bit, but every year I think at some point you're going to level out. But again, we saw up through the third quarter. If I can pull my work plan up, I can give you the numbers. But our burglaries.
The newspaper picks up on that.
I would too. Yeah. Stay out of Delaware if you're going to commit crime. So we, and a lot of that is again, I attribute it to the work ethic of our police officers. They're getting out. They don't circle the block waiting for calls. They're looking for stuff, and they really understand the dynamic of the drug trade and the property crimes and how those things work together. And they work well as a team. They work well with other agents. They're putting together a really informal but very effective strategy of attacking these things at the root of the problem and not just responding to them.
Chris, could you just address in just terms of manpower, and Bill didn't, but I think he's got some of the same issues, just the increase in special events that we have just required more of our time, not just the special events, but the protocol that Homeland Security's established for big public events. You notice, obviously, we have the big Jersey barriers out. We didn't used to do that, and that's resulted in, you can talk about it.
Right. Our response to special events, we try and stay kind of on top of the security issue. So when when the first truck drove through a crowd in Nice, France, that first Friday, we had the jersey barriers out, and we've required that downtown now for every major event in the downtown area. Now that you have Vegas, we have other issues, so we're constantly looking at what our security plan is for these events, but the cost in staffing the event, and when I say cost, it's not really even a dollar cost. I just trying to conservatively figure it out. I think I had about 650 man hours just in overtime costs in bringing people in to staff special events. And that's not our on-duty cost or our planning costs or our where we dedicate people to the events that are already on duty. So we do spend a significant amount of manpower on these events, and bringing people in on extra duty and working overtime to staff them. It's, the events themselves are great. And if you ask everyone at the police department, they think it's great. When they see downtown packed, it's great, but that creates multiple layers of concern for us. And probably one of the things we need to do is look at our staffing model. So we had the consultation done in, I think it was 2008. And we've gotten pretty good at kind of looking at those numbers and tweaking it since then. And, right now, given an average, yearly call for service of around 30,000 calls from the public a year, we're probably short officers from where we should be. But then that model doesn't consider all these special event hours. And we actually talked to Alex Weiss, who created that report all those years ago. He teaches some of the ongoing training for the Law Enforcement Foundation. He was in town the other day, and we asked him how you work that into your allocation model. He says, you don't. People should be paying for that. So, I think it's growing pains. I think it's something we want to look at maybe in 2018 and how we manage some of these special events. But it definitely, and it's not the dollar amount that concerns me more than seeing the amount of extra duty I have posted that I can't fill sometimes, because there's only so many hours people can work, and it's over and above a lot of times what we're already doing.
I know Ironman, you get a check from them, right, for that event?
Correct.
I doubt that it covers everything.
Well, there's a caveat there. The city's committed to in-kind services, so we calculate our cost, but that's part of that in-kind service. But Ironman does also cut a check because it's more than just the Delaware Police Department providing the security service.
But there's still events that we've held, these legacy events that we've never charged for. That's kind of what we have to take a look at.
Right. There's, really the biggest, I can tell you the biggest commitment we've seen is when you look at First Friday. When I first became chief, I was the one who stirred the pot and suggested, listen, you're getting so many people here that we really should just shut the streets, because there were so many people and they were spilling into the streets, and we had traffic and pedestrians and they were crossing. So we did that. But those events are bringing in so many people. It's just really necessary that we watch those. But we provide everything for First Friday. We provide 4 officers and 2 cruisers and jersey barriers and public works crew to set them up and take them down. And there's city-sponsored events. There's outside events that come in, but really, if I had to say one change we should make, is there should be city law enforcement at every event downtown. I just think, you're looking at the way of the world now is when you bring a lot of people together, there is a vulnerability, and I do not take the approach that Delaware is immune for that, and I put out a product that makes us a hard target. So if you're going to come to Delaware, you're going to see officers, you're going to see operation, you're going to see planning, and we hope that has the intended effect that it's a lot of preparation and planning and results for a safe event, and nothing happens.
Yeah, I know what a jersey barrier is, but why is it called a jersey barrier?
New Jersey, put them up probably. It's something to do with the state of New Jersey and,
I didn't know that was
and
a
along
brand
the
name or that's
along the turnpike.
They call me a dumb patrolman or something like that too. The director. Yeah, I couldn't tell you.
The other, regarding the downtown and our contribution to Main Street, so we make that cash contribution, but if we also make a significant in-kind contribution, and that's
So all the officers you see working throughout this weekend
public works, and that's part of making sure that our downtown is vibrant.
And if I could just add something, I mentioned it last for 2017 budget, and it continues to happen today, is that there are local governments being sued all the time because they are not providing police, their local police law enforcement at special events, because the courts are now saying, you should have known that you were going to have that many people. It is your responsibility, local government, to have them there. So, obviously it's council's decision if you want to start charging these groups that are having these events. However, the end game to protect the city of Delaware is that chief has to have them there. So they're going to be there because if something would happen, we're liable, no matter who's holding the event. So I brought that up in 2017 budget. I just want to make sure that everybody understands that he has a responsibility to make sure there are officers at these events. If not, we're setting up for big liability. Whether or not we charge the people that host it is your call.
So are the officers that are working running a special duty rate, or is it overtime, or?
If the organizer is hiring the officers, they are paid a special duty rate. If we are putting the officer there, they're paid overtime.
Yeah.
And that's where I think what Jackie's talking about is that's really is a policy decision, and I don't think there's a bad decision that can be made there. I think these events are really good for Delaware, and it's it's great to see on a third Friday how packed downtown is. So you bring all those people in, you really, there is a collateral effect that's really, really good for Delaware. It's just a point where we probably just need to organize how we're making these decisions and just agree on a policy and move forward, so we have maybe some sort of matrix so that we know that we're doing these things in a consistent manner.
Well, I think if the event is for the businesses, nobody's making any money but the businesses. In return, we get some of that money. If the event's such as Ironman, that is for profit, they should be paid. An event like the car show, which was all donated back, we should donate to people. That's just the way I kind of think of it in my head.
Well, and then, I would like to just
Maybe not,
propose
but-
quickly is that maybe we should have a special fund that is a special events fund, so that council can be very aware how much each one of these events is costing us. I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying, but I think that because, the different departments, there's a lot of departments involved with special events, and I don't think that council sees those costs for that. Not that everybody wants these events, but, everybody wants a pool too, but there's a cost associated, and you need to know what that cost is. So,
And I think the general public needs to know that too. That maybe we're not putting money into it, but look how much manpower we're putting into public works and police officers.
and the other thing is with especially manpower, I wanted to mention, which Chief didn't mention, is that we have certain months through the year where there are so many things going on that our officers are quite in, public works, public utilities. They're just tired. They don't care. You could pay them 3 times what they make. They need a night off. And we're running up against this in July because some events want things moved. And do we have 3 weekends in a row in July, or is it 4? That we have something every weekend.
You have First Friday, 4th of July, car show, Ironman. And
That's a lot.
And then I think we have some
we're just
events at the end of June.
We will just do something on in regard to whether we pay for this police or charge just from some experience in Columbus. They had a kind of policy where there were certain ones they provided police for, other ones where they charged the event coordinator. When event coordinators sued them and basically said, look, you supply police for all these other events, why aren't you supplying police for ours? So there's something to think of. You think it's what you say makes sense, but from a legal standpoint, you're going to run into a situation where one of these times we're going to say we're charging you. We're going to say, well, you didn't charge Main Street. So, something to keep in mind.
As a special events committee, we're happy to work on a policy if council wants to give us some direction on what they want to do with that. But we have a policy, but with so many events coming to Delaware, which is great. We are a destination city now. if council has some direction and you want to see it incorporated into our policy, we're happy to look at it.
I think one of the examples of the newer events we've had is the New Moon and the New Moon Marathon, the half marathon. That they help, they pay, I
Oh, they
believe.
pay 100%.
Yeah, they pay
There's no
100%.
question.
That's not one of the legacy events that we have. And they raise money, and some of that money goes to good, good causes.
Mhm.
But it's some of these events we've had for a number, whether it's a parade, and it's a parade's a little different, obviously, because it's, the organizers of the parade aren't of the same, they don't have the same organizational support that a New Moon or an Ironman or some of these other big events do. So that's where you have to, yes, it gets back.
Right. The parades are really manpower intensive. You have a lot of intersections to cover.
I mean, there's a lot of people involved in the parade.
All of that.
I mean, it might be helpful, Jackie, in terms of what policy direction we want to go, to have a sense of what we're spending on all these events. And then one thought that comes to mind to me is maybe we decide we're going to fund the special events fund with X amount of dollars a year. And that's how much we've got to cover these special events.
Mhm.
And then there could always be some exceptions for some of the events that you're talking about. But
Right.
in terms of, I just think from us not getting in a pinch by some of them were supplying, some of them were not.
Yeah,
Maybe
which
we
is what we're doing now.
don't have an idea how much it costs us. to do.
So we'll send out an email and we'll try to pull together some estimates from the last few years. It's
Why don't we just use 2018 to chart our costs and keep track of them and then have a good idea going forward what we're talking about.
okay. So we're looking at maybe putting a special fund for 19 then.
Well, when you say, that's what we
Yeah,
have to define when we say the special fund is how
We're not
that.
going to create a fund. We should be able to track our costs out. If we do, we just don't
Well, I want
accumulate
to
it
say
in
is
an
we'll
overall.
allocate X amount of money for this cost. And once we have a better idea of what to expect, we can make that decision. But then
Sure.
beyond that, there has to be some
Yeah.
alternative funding.
So we can either do an estimate for 17 or else we could just start tracking our 18 costs. It's up to what you would like us to do.
We can provide you basically that information Bruce has already provided. We can provide you what we're currently, spending, but also just commit that 18, we're gonna track it. And so the
Okay.
budget process.
Yeah, well, I concur,
It's
'cause-
public utility, it's
Yes.
fire, my
We-
time, Lee's time.
And it'll probably give you a better idea in compiling all those things as an after action on each event, because I can go back, and I did go back, and that's where I came up with about 650 overtime hours, not duty hours. So that's really conservative. So, if we can get a good idea, and it really is seeing as it's not a crisis. It's not something that happened. It's a growing pain. So, give us a year to kind of compile numbers, look at things, and then maybe come back and be able to have a better picture for you to look at.
Well, one of the things moving forward, just to keep it relative and as opposed to next year at budget time, talking about it again, is we have a monthly report. The city manager provides one. I provide one. John Donahue does. He shows certain metrics, whether anybody looks at them or not, and maybe a part of that needs to be in that given month, what were the special events and what were our costs? And that way we keep that trail and we keep doing it and get it to be a regular basis. You can, at the end of the year, we could total it and see once what it looks like in total, but you get to see them as they occur.
Good idea.
We'll do that.
Any other questions for Bruce or comment? I just want to thank you also for the work that you've done with SWCI down there and that coalition. I think that's been really helpful.
Thank you.
So I know that was kind of your initiative to start that, and I think it's great. And the bike thing that you had this year, that was just
Conference.
all those people in town. You impress me all the time, so thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Bruce? Okay, look at the time. I'm so excited.
Pick it back up Monday night.
Yes, Monday night. We'll be here at
6 o'clock.
Oh, you ready?
Mayor, I have a quick question.
Did you do that
Yes.
intentionally?
Before Monday, the assistant city manager passed out this memorandum on this
Right.
committee promotions, and I really think we need to I appreciate everything what you're saying here, but I hate to see that $5,000 taken out of Main Street. I'd rather see 2,500 come out of the Arts Castle and the Symphony as
Okay.
opposed to
Yeah.
put that $5,000 back into
We
the.
were gonna add that, Chris, Monday night. I mean, that'll be a other fun
Okay.
discussion.
I
made a
mean,
note,
look at
yeah.
last night, man, every
Yeah.
dime is spent and it's
Right, we've
outstanding.
been after it for years to do this, now they're doing it, I don't want to cut
I
that.
agree.
Right.
Agree.
Well, you're not
not cutting the funding, you're reducing you're not fully funding the request.
Right, right.
But that was on our notes for Monday
Okay,
night.
great, great.
Other fun discussion, yes.
Okay, I will remind you all that there's a big toy drive today at Roots between 12 and 4, I do believe. So if you get a chance to drop off toys, it's just you drive through and drop it off.
And I remind you that there's also one at Shorty's tonight
Yes.
as well.
I have that one too on my
And if
list.
you haven't seen the new courthouse, there's an open house tomorrow between 12 and 2. Really,
There's also a parade at 3 o'clock.
you can watch the parade. if you want to-
No, I'll be a little busy in the parade.
Special events, we had something to do.
And then also at 12:45 is Pearl Harbor on the
Yeah.
Williams, on the Winter Street Bridge. 12:45, correctly?
12:45, 1:30.
Yes.
Today?
No,
Oh, it's
tomorrow.
Pearl Harbor Day.
It's on the side.
I know, but
Well,
they
yeah.
always do
They're
it
doing it
on
on
Sunday.
Sunday. Okay, all right. I want to make sure.
So I'm gonna go set up my float and then run over there and then go back.
Wait, it's tomorrow, you said.
Tomorrow,
Okay,
Tomorrow.
okay, so you're going to go back. I didn't know.
I could go back to the fairgrounds. I'm to the bingo. Okay, with that, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
He's like, yes, yes, yes. We are adjourned at 12:01. How's that?
That worked out well.